Chapter 72. If someone were to barge into Colin's room, they would see a scene that would make their blood boil. A man and a woman were entangled on the ground. The woman's teeth were biting the man's neck, greedily sucking on it. Colin, on the other hand, was sitting on the side with his legs crossed, admiring this strange and bloody scene with great interest. At the same time, he also guessed that the accident that happened when he was eating Cynthia was probably some kind of inheritance ceremony of the blood breeds. Perhaps it should be called the embrace. And after Cynthia was embraced by him, she became his blood descendant. As a bloodkin, she could not harm Colin. She also had to listen to Colin's orders unconditionally. She also could not reveal the secrets of the blood breeds to outsiders. These 3 iron rules that were engraved in Cynthia's mind made Colin feel completely at ease with her. The only thing that made Colin disappointed was that after becoming his bloodkin, Cynthia's blood could no longer help him advance. Moreover, creating a bloodkin seemed to require a drop in rank. This made Colin a little depressed. But at the same time, he also understood that this godly skill that could turn an enemy into a loyal servant, if there were no necessary costs and restrictions, then it would be too invincible. If that was the case, Colin would only need to bite anyone he saw, and it wouldn't be long before the whole world would become the blood breed's paradise. However, he still had to continue experimenting with what kind of setting the embrace was. Now, he was testing whether the bloodkin could create another bloodkin through the embrace. At this time, Cynthia and Raymond's embrace ceremony was nearing its end. "What rank are you now?" Seeing Cynthia let go of the wound, Colin quickly asked. "Second rank." This was a drop in rank. Colin nodded, then looked at Raymond. "Raymond?" Knight Raymond opened his eyes. After a short moment of confusion, he immediately woke up. "Master." Hearing Raymond call him Master and not Lord Viscounts, Colin knew that the embrace was a success. He pointed at Cynthia and asked, "Then who is she?" "She is also my master." Colin frowned and continued to ask, "If my orders conflict with hers, who will you listen to?" "I'll listen to you," Raymond said to Colin. "But because you are her master?" Colin stroked his chin. He suddenly felt that this blood tribe inheritance was quite interesting. It was as though a blood race genealogy had been imprinted into their minds, allowing them to distinguish who was the true ruler. "What's your level now?" Colin asked again. "Second rank." This was Raymond's original rank. Colin could basically confirm now that the vampire who performed the embrace would pay the price of losing 1 level of strength, while the vampire who received the embrace would maintain the same strength. "Give me your blood." Colin passed over a cup and ordered Raymond. "Yes." Without any hesitation, Raymond cut his arm open, and fresh blood flowed into the cup. "All right, that's enough." Seeing that the blood was about to spill out of the cup and Raymond showed no signs of stopping, Colin hurriedly called for him to stop. He didn't want his own vampire to die from excessive blood loss. Drinking Raymond's blood in one gulp, Colin carefully felt the changes in his body. However, the surprise didn't happen. Other than replenishing stamina, Knight Raymond's blood couldn't help Colin level up. Colin completely gave up. It seemed that this shortcut wouldn't work. After understanding the price and limitations of the embrace, Colin knew that creating a vampire without limit wouldn't work. Taking out the parchment he kept, Colin prepared to record these new discoveries. But just as he was about to write, Colin realized a problem. The 2 vampires he developed were both knights. Then, could other professions be developed into vampires? What about non-professionals? Thinking of this, Colin immediately had Raymond make a trip to Icestone City's prison. Soon, Raymond came back with 2 death row prisoners. One was a rank 1 warrior, and the other was a normal person who didn't have any profession. When the 2 death row prisoners saw Colin, they thought that they were about to be executed and immediately begged for mercy. Colin felt that they were too noisy, so he had Cynthia knock them out one by one. Then, his gaze hesitated between Cynthia and Raymond, and finally chose Raymond. "Raymond, go bite him." Colin pointed at the rank 1 warrior. Raymond didn't mind the stench of this guy who had just been fished out of prison and directly bit him. After a long time, Raymond had almost sucked the death row warrior dry, but the expected backlash still hadn't come. Colin rubbed his chin, feeling that the warrior profession probably couldn't become a vampire. Before, when he used the embrace on Cynthia, and when Cynthia used the embrace on Raymond, there was a backlash when they were halfway through sucking the blood. And now this, Colin didn't call for a stop, wondering if a miracle would happen. However, the miracle didn't happen. The death row soldier was directly sucked dry by Raymond, turning into a dried corpse. The embrace failed. Although he didn't have much hope, Colin still wanted to give it a try and let Raymond use the embrace on the non-professional death row prisoner. If even a warrior couldn't do it, then this guy who wasn't even a warrior probably couldn't become a vampire. Another round of sucking. Poor Raymond, because he had sucked too much blood, vomited a few times along the way, but still, he didn't succeed in using the embrace on the non-professional death row prisoner. Colin also couldn't find other professions for the time being, such as mages, warriors, rangers, etc., to do this experiment, so he could only give up. Currently, it seemed that only knights could receive the embrace and become a vampire. Colin wrote down this strange setting on the parchment and couldn't help but feel puzzled. Why did it have to be a knight? Moreover, the blood of a high-level knight and the holy water of the church could help him advance. This was a very strange point. Could it be that the blood breeds of this world had some kind of relationship with the Church of Glory? Colin shook his head and temporarily put this thought aside. The current him didn't have the right to investigate the mystery behind this. When he was strong enough to drink pure holy water like it was water, maybe he could test the relationship between the God of Glory and the blood breeds. However, the most important thing now was to develop his own territory and build an army loyal to him. Originally, Colin wanted to use the embrace to obtain an army of absolute loyalty, but after discovering the harsh conditions of the embrace, he gave up. Vampires were destined to be precious and rare. Therefore, they had to be used in the most appropriate place. Thinking of this, Colin immediately ordered Cynthia, immediately head to Fallen Eagle City and pledge your loyalty to Earl Amon. Yes. Chapter 73. Lord Charles, are you all right? The maid saw Knight Charles, who was walking unsteadily and almost fell, and hurriedly went forward to help him. I'm not drunk. Generally speaking, 70 to 80% of those who said this were really drunk. The maid was already used to Knight Charles's drunken state. She knew that Knight Charles would go to the tavern to drink almost every day and would not return until he was completely drunk. This retired officer of the Black Cavalry, after switching allegiance to Colin under the orders of Marquis Garcia, it was as if he had become a different person. The iron-blooded knight who had once galloped on the battlefield and killed trolls until they cried like ghosts and howled like wolves had completely disappeared. Only an alcoholic who could not hold a sword steadily and had nothing to do every day could only rely on alcohol to numb himself. The maid struggled to help the dizzy Knight Charles onto the bed and asked softly, "Sir, do you need some water?" Knight Charles did not respond. After the maid heard the other party's thunderous snoring, she shook her head helplessly. She could only carefully take off the other party's coat and shoes, cover him with a blanket, and then get up and leave. The door was gently closed. But after a while, it was opened again. Colin walked in. "Charles? Knight Charles?" Colin called out twice and even pushed Charles's arm. But there was no response. "Charles, I order you to get up immediately." Colin raised his voice and even pinched the other party's nose mischievously. Huff. Charles's breathing was obstructed. After struggling for a while, he opened his mouth and gasped for breath. But he still did not wake up. Colin rolled his eyes. Colin originally had high hopes for this retired officer of the Black Cavalry. In his opinion, Knight Charles and the dozen or so retired soldiers of the Black Cavalry with him were excellent candidates for instructors. They were the cavalry seeds he had always dreamed of. However, it was a pity that not everyone could accept the cruel reality and stand up again after suffering a heavy blow. This was especially true for soldiers like Knight Charles, who valued glory as much as his life. His retirement from the Black Cavalry was a huge blow to him. It almost completely destroyed this tough guy. Originally, Colin was almost ready to give up on this guy. But now, he had a better idea. Colin slowly revealed his two sharp canine teeth and was about to bite down. But he still stopped. If he guessed correctly, The complete embrace ritual should be able to create conscious spawns. Then, how would he explain this to Knight Charles? Colin rubbed his chin. He felt that he couldn't forcefully convert her while she was asleep without her consent. In that case, he might not be able to get a loyal subordinate. Thus, Colin sat down on the chair in the room again, thinking about what to say later. When Knight Charles woke up again, it was already close to noon. "Shui, someone come. Give me water." The moment Charles woke up, he yelled for the maids. Soon, a cup of water was handed in front of Charles. Charles took it and put it in his mouth. But from the corner of his eye, he saw the person standing in front of his bed. Not a maid. Charles spat out all the water he had just drunk. Then he hurriedly got out of bed and bowed. "Sir Viscounts, why are you here?" Colin sat back on the chair and waved at Charles with a smile. "Don't be nervous, I'm just here to see you." Charles was embarrassed. "You can send someone to summon me, you don't have to come here personally. I sent someone, but they didn't seem to be able to wake you up, so I came here myself." Charles was even more embarrassed and apologized repeatedly. "I'm sorry, Sir Viscounts, I drank a little too much last night." "Only last night?" Colin smiled. "Please rest assured, I will control my drinking in the future. This won't happen again." Hearing Charles's promise, Colin was not relieved. If Marquis Garcia stood in front of Charles and asked him to make such a promise, perhaps Charles would really carry it out meticulously. But if it was Colin himself, he felt that he did not have such prestige. So, Colin followed the plan he had thought of last night and asked, "Knight Charles, I can understand your pain, and I've found a way to help you return to the battlefield." "Really?" Charles suddenly raised his head, his eyes finally shining. But at the same time, a trace of disbelief flashed through his heart. In order to heal his injuries, Marquis Garcia had also approached the Church of Glory. But the answer he received was that only a priest above the level of a cardinal could perform the healing technique of limb regrowth. A cardinal? There were only 3 cardinals in the entire Church of Glory. How could such an important person be willing to waste his divine power to heal a small knight like him? So, Charles was in despair. But now, Colin had given him a glimmer of hope. "I can't guarantee success. Also, this method has a certain price." Colin's cautious attitude not only did not disappoint Charles, it made him trust Colin even more. "As long as I can hold my sword tightly again, I'm willing to pay any price." "Are you sure? This treatment method may make you lose your mind and turn you into a muddle-headed beast." Charles laughed bitterly. "Lord Viscounts, I'm now a muddle-headed beast. Leaving the battlefield, I'd rather die." "Have you thought it through?" Charles knelt on one knee in front of Colin and nodded solemnly. "I've thought it through. As long as you can help me recover my fingers, I swear in the name of my ancestors to the God of Glory that I'll be at your disposal for the rest of my life." Although Charles had already sworn loyalty to Colin, he had done it under the orders of Marquis Garcia. But this time he was willing to do it. Colin felt Charles's determination and handed him a mug. "There's a knockout drug in this water. The treatment ritual later requires you to be unconscious because the process will be painful." After hearing about the knockout drug, Charles still took the mug and drank it in one gulp. He did not even listen to Colin's explanation. Colin raised his eyebrows. He was moved by Charles's determination and trust. After a while, Charles fell asleep under the influence of the knockout drug. Colin walked over, revealed his sharp canine teeth, and bit Charles's neck. Sure enough, just like when he first embraced Cynthia, after Colin sucked for a while, he noticed a suction force coming from Charles's wound. This time, Colin did not run away. He suppressed the panic in his heart and allowed his blood to flow into Charles's body through his canine teeth. Slowly, wisps of blood-red smoke floated out of the 2 of them. The smoke was like a living creature, drawing regular curves on the ground. It was like a magic circle. There were more and more curves, more and more complicated, more and more mysterious. In a trance, low murmurs that sounded like sleep talk echoed in Colin's ears. The voice grew louder and louder, as if it was announcing something. "The condensation of blood is my spirit. Lord of blood, immortal and indestructible. With my blood, I bestow thee my inheritance." Chapter 74. Knock, knock, knock. Come in. Raymond walked into the room and bowed. Sir Viscounts, Steward Aemon and the Knight of Rigo have successfully arrived at Icestone City. Yes, I understand. Colin had just completed the embrace on Knight Charles and his face was a bit pale. Let them settle down and meet me in the study. Yes. After Raymond left, Colin looked at the still unconscious Charles and tried to order, "Get up, Charles, get up." However, Charles didn't respond. Colin frowned. He wasn't sure if the embrace ceremony was considered a success. Furthermore, he was shocked to discover that his cultivation level had actually decreased. Colin was originally a rank 2 knight, but after this embrace ceremony, he actually dropped to rank 1. He just didn't know if this drop in rank was temporary or permanent. However, he was still somewhat mentally prepared for this. A complete embrace ceremony probably wouldn't come without a price. Colin was already very surprised that he could create blood thralls without paying a price. If it wasn't for the fact that blood thralls couldn't continue to create the next generation of blood thralls, he would have been very surprised. If the blood thralls couldn't produce new blood thralls, Colin estimated that he could even create a vampire version of Resident Evil in this other world. Originally, he wanted to wait for Knight Charles to wake up before doing further experiments, but considering that Steward Aemon and the Knight of Rigo were still waiting for him, he didn't delay any longer and got up to leave Charles's room. When Knight Charles wakes up, have him meet me in the study. Colin ordered the maid guarding the door. Arriving at the study, Colin had just taken a sip of water when he saw Raymond walk in. Behind him was the Angeli family's old steward, Aemon, and the family's knight, Rigo Morban. Master. Sir Viscounts. You're finally here. Come sit. You've had a hard journey, what would you like to drink? Coffee will be fine. The Knight of Rigo rubbed his big bald head and hesitated for a moment before following behind Aemon and saying, "Same for me." Colin glanced at Leg with a smile. He had noticed Leg's hesitation just now, so he ordered the attendant at the door. Go prepare 2 cups of coffee and a glass of ale. Yes. Then Colin turned to look at Leg. If you want a drink, just say it. We haven't seen each other in a while. Why are you being so courteous with me? Hee, thank you, Lord Viscounts. Leg grinned, his ugly face smiling like a chrysanthemum. Leg was Raymond's elder brother. These 2 brothers of the Morban family became wandering knights when their family declined. They later pledged their loyalty to Baron Angeli and had a good relationship with Colin. Especially Leg, this tall and strong man was very talented in martial arts. When Baron Angeli was not at home, he was the one who acted as Colin's martial arts teacher. Therefore, when Colin saw this old acquaintance, although he was no longer the youth from before, he still instinctively felt a sense of familiarity. The 3 people in the study, Aemon, Leg, and Raymond, could be said to be the core of the Angeli family. As for the members of the side branches of the Angeli family, they were not outstanding people. Colin would only provide them with good food and drink and give them some simple things to do, but he would not rely on them too much. Perhaps when Knight Charles woke up, he could also join this core circle. The attendant quickly brought in coffee and ale. Colin exchanged a few pleasantries with everyone, then got to the main topic. Aemon, I need you to immediately take over the daily affairs of the territory. Also, find a few candidates for clerks and tax officers. Make a list and give it to me. I will finalize and assign them to each town. Although the family territory has expanded a lot this time, the family's financial situation will probably go through a difficult period. Also, Icestone City has just been ransacked by the trolls and needs to rest. I don't want to raise taxes at this time. Therefore, other than the daily necessities, do not do anything extravagant. Everything will be simple. Yes, Master. You are truly a wise and benevolent lord, Butler Aemon said in a gratified tone. However, the old butler thought for a moment and still asked, However, Master, do you want to renovate the castle you are currently living in? After all, the things here were left behind by the Su Duo family. No need, I don't care about these things. Colin waved his hand. Aemon then suggested, do you want to change the color of the castle's outer walls? This way, it won't cost much, but it will also give off a new atmosphere. Colin thought for a moment and felt that this idea was not bad. Changing the skin of the castle would not cost much, but it would let the citizens know that there was a new master here. All right. Then let's change it to red. Is this dye easy to get? Colin felt that as a member of the blood breed, red was his lucky color. The old butler thought for a moment and nodded. It's convenient. The coastal areas of the empire's southern border produce a dye made from coral. It can be used to dye the castle's outer walls red. The price is not expensive either. Very good, then let's do that. Yes, master. The old butler nodded and then asked, do we need to change the castle's name? Colin rubbed his chin. He suddenly realized that he had never paid attention to the name of the Sioux Duo family's castle. However, this was no longer important. Let's call it Red Castle. The genius at naming Colin immediately made a decision. The corner of Eamon's mouth twitched. He was speechless at this name. The old butler was already resentful that the Angeli family's original Grey Castle was called Grey Castle. He did not expect that there would be another Red Castle now. Thinking about the names of other castles, Frostmoon Castle, White Dew Castle, Fontaine Castle, only this could reflect the self-restraint that an elegant noble should have. Don't you need to think about it again? Eamon carefully suggested. Is the name Red Castle not nice? Colin blinked and looked at the Mobin brothers. The knight Raymond immediately nodded. This knight had always been obedient to Colin. The knight of Rigo also nodded frantically. I think this name is very good. Eamon glanced at him and found that this silly fellow's expression did not seem to be fake. It seemed that he really liked this name. For the family style, I must first make the Viscount stay as far away from these two ignorant and incompetent fellows as possible, the old butler secretly thought to himself. Okay, then it's settled. Colin immediately decided on the castle's name. He really could not think of a better name. Eamon secretly sighed. He suddenly realized that there was still a long way to go to improve the Angeli family style. Oh, that's right. Why don't we change the family crest too? Colin suddenly suggested. Colin did not like the roaring white bear emblem of the Angeli family very much. In his heart, he had some ideas about the new emblem. Butler Eamon reminded him, Master, changing the family emblem requires the approval of the Empire's Senate. Okay, then let's go through the process. Colin casually replied. But, to go through the process of the Senate, cough cough, Master, Colin was stunned. Only then did he realize what Eamon meant. They actually wanted to bribe him. Going through the memories of his predecessor, Colin indeed found that the Empire's Senate was really like that. Without money, there was basically nothing that could be done. Especially for a small family like the Angeli family. If they did not bleed once, the elders of the Senate would not even look at them. Then forget it, let's talk about it later. Colin would not give money now. He had a lot of money now. An army. The most important thing now was to raise money to build an army. Chapter 75. Rigo, how many people are left in the family's army? Including the soldiers Raymond brought to Icestone City, there are about 600 people in the family's army. 600? Colin rubbed his head, feeling a bit depressed. Actually, this was all his dead father's fault, who had buried most of the family's army on the front lines. Now, the Angeli family only had this little bit left. We need to expand the army. Colin clenched his teeth. He was very clear that in this dangerous alternate world, only the army was his foundation. If he could have an army as terrifying as the Black Cavalry, then whoever the master of the northern frontier would have to ask for Colin's opinion. Therefore, Colin left the daily affairs of the Lord to Eamon, while he focused most of his energy on the construction of the army. Yes, Lord Viscounts. How many soldiers do you need? Colin took a sip from his mug. The coffee inside was already cold, and the bitter taste cleared his mind. First, replenish the regular army with 1,000 men, then form a reserve force of 1,000 men. I'll give you a month's time, is that enough? The two brothers thumped their chests loudly. Colin nodded, believing that the two brothers should be able to complete this task well. However, the soldiers Colin and Raymond recruited and trained were all infantry, while the cavalry that Colin truly desired would have to be found elsewhere. Raymond, go see if Knight Charles is awake. If he is, tell him to come see me immediately. Yes. Raymond left, and Colin sat behind the desk again. He waved at Eamon and began to hand over the mountainous pile of official documents. There were a lot of things to do in the territory. Fortunately, Eamon came, otherwise Colin would have to deal with them for a while. The Knight of Rigo sat on the side in a daze. However, he was originally someone who couldn't sit still. After drinking all the ale, he began to scratch his head and look around. Colin didn't have time to pay attention to him at this time. Not long after, Legg took the initiative to speak. Lord Viscounts, I have a small request. Speak? Colin did not even raise his head. Legg touched his bald head with an embarrassed expression on his face. I heard that your new fief includes a place called Ice Lake Town, right? Yes. The previous lord there was Baron Billy, but this idiot participated in the Lord's rebellion and was executed by the Duke. The Duke has also bestowed the territory to me. Yes, it's there. Legg rubbed his hands and said hesitantly, do you know that it used to be the fief of the Mobben family? Hearing this, Colin put down the document in his hand and raised his head to look at Legg, his eyes carrying a trace of scrutiny. Why do I remember that the fief of the Mobben family was Cotton Town? Yes, you didn't remember wrongly. Cotton Flower Town was indeed our family's fief. However, before becoming the Lord of Cotton Flower Town, our family's fief was actually in Ice Lake Town. That was a long time ago, even Baron Angeli doesn't know about it. The real place where the Mobben family rose was actually Ice Lake Town. The scrutinizing look in Colin's eyes disappeared, and he said with a smile, I see, it seems that your family has really experienced many ups and downs. Just now, Colin almost thought that Legg was lying. If Legg did not explain it clearly later, Colin was afraid that he would really reevaluate the loyalty of this seemingly honest knight. Legg could not help but touch his big bald head again. Colin could not help but wonder if this guy's hair was being rubbed by him like this. Colin now understood Legg's meaning. This guy probably wanted him to keep Ice Lake Town for the Mobben family, and reward them after they made a contribution. However, Colin suddenly wanted to tease this silly big guy. Do you want to go back and have a look? Legg was stunned, then quickly nodded, yes. I don't want to go back and have a look. After all, it's been so many years, I don't know how it's developing now. Of course you can go, I'll give you a few days off. But when you go, you have to greet the Lord there and pay attention to etiquette. What? Legg was dumbfounded. Have you already conferred Ice Lake Town to someone else? Colin held his chin and looked at Legg's dumbfounded look, feeling quite amused. Yes, I've already decided on a good candidate, but it hasn't been officially conferred yet. Legg was so anxious that his face turned red. Then who did you confer Ice Lake Town to? Colin leaned against the back of the chair with a smile, and felt that he had played enough with this silly big guy, so he told the truth, Raymond Mobben. Raymond? Legg realized that Colin was teasing him, and he immediately felt relieved. He stepped forward, knelt on one knee, and said solemnly, thank you for your kindness to the Mobben family. My brother and I will always remember it in our hearts. What? You don't blame me for giving the title to your brother and not you? Of course not. I already know of the contributions my brother has made along the way with you. He deserves to be rewarded. That's good. When you two help me train the first batch of troops, I will confer Raymond the title of Baron of Ice Lake Town, and let you go back with him to take a look. Thank you, sir. In fact, Colin had already planned to confer Raymond the title of Baron. After all, Raymond had been on the run with him, and had indeed worked hard and contributed a lot. Moreover, he was loyal and devoted. If he were to confer the title of Baron now, it would definitely be Raymond. However, Raymond's fief was something Colin had decided on the spot after hearing Legg's story and learning that Ice Lake Town was the old fief of the Mobben family. Knock. Come in. The door opened again, and Raymond led Charles in. Sir Viscounts. Knight Charles bowed respectfully to Colin, as if there was no difference from before. However, Colin still felt that there seemed to be some kind of indistinct connection between the two, as if it was a kind of bloodline resonance. Moreover, although Knight Charles's rank was higher than Colin's, Colin felt that he could completely suppress the other party. This was not a suppression of strength, but a suppression of bloodline. Colin felt that Knight Charles, A clan member created through the embrace ceremony could not be called a blood thrall. It would be more appropriate to call him a blood descendant. Leg, Raymond, you two are dismissed. The recruitment and training of the troops will begin immediately. Yes, Sir Viscounts. The two brothers bowed and left. Aemon, you should leave as well. You take care of the daily affairs of the territory, and discuss with me if there's anything you can't decide on. Yes, sir. After Aemon left, the study suddenly quieted down. Colin looked at Knight Charles, hesitating on how to greet his first blood descendant. However, Knight Charles had already knelt on one knee, his left hand clasped in front of his chest, and said with a sincere expression, Sir God's chosen one, thank you for the grace you have bestowed upon me. Chapter 76. Colin was confused. What did you just call me? God's chosen one. Colin blinked and seemed to understand something. Then, he quickly sat up straight and pretended to be shocked. You actually saw through my identity. After taking a deep breath, Colin asked in a serious tone, You're right? Knight Charles, how did you recognize me as a God's chosen one? Charles raised his right hand and showed the section of his thumb to Colin. Sir, I can already feel the Lord's divine power repairing my body. To be able to cast such a divine spell and not be a priest, you must be a God's chosen one. Moreover, although I was unconscious during the healing ceremony, I still felt a trace of divine aura. That must be the aura of the God of light. Even now, I can feel an irresistible power from you. You must be an apostle of an angel. You must be a God's chosen one. There were indeed God's chosen ones in this world. At least, that was what the Church of Light promoted. The most famous God's chosen one was, of course, the founding emperor of the Empire of Light, Garner San Lorenzo. The Church of Light recognized this legendary paladin as the angel of strength under the God of Light, Michael's apostle. And now, Colin suddenly realized that this God's chosen one setting was very suitable to fool his own blood descendants. Blood descendants created through a complete embrace ceremony obviously had their own consciousness. Although bloodline suppression could force the blood descendants to obey him, this method of control had hidden dangers. After all, loyalty under the threat of violence could not stand the test. Therefore, Colin had to use a clever method to control the other party. Then, what could be more suitable than religion to brainwash people? Knight Charles, you guessed right. I am indeed a God's chosen one. Sir, which archangel's apostle are you? After receiving Colin's confirmation, Knight Charles trembled with excitement. Colin leaned forward slightly and said seriously, Blood Angel, Dracula? Blood Angel? Knight Charles was puzzled. Please forgive my ignorance, but I don't think I've heard of this archangel's name. You must have heard it before. Of course you haven't. Colin did not panic at all. With a mysterious look, he said, This blood angel is a secret servant of the God of Light hidden in the darkness. He's responsible for carrying out secret missions. Of course, we can't let his name spread to the world. I understand. Now that you know who I am, to ensure the success of this secret mission, you must promise that you will never tell anyone about my real identity and what happened today. Not even His Holiness the Pope. Yes, my lord. I will never divulge any information about you. Colin looked at the fanatical Knight Charles and nodded with satisfaction. The deception was a success. In order to heal your severed finger, I instilled the blood angel's divine power into your body. Therefore, in the following period of time, your body may undergo some changes. But don't panic and don't make it public. Just record these changes and tell me. Understood? Yes, my lord, I understand. Knight Charles nodded without the slightest doubt. Then, Colin picked up a cup of water and handed it to Knight Charles. The grace of God requires a price. You've heard of this before, haven't you? Of course. Yes, the price for the grace of the blood angel this time is your loyalty and a cup of fresh blood. All right. Knight Charles cut his wrist without hesitation and let the blood flow into the cup. You're level 3 now, right? Colin asked again. Yes, my lord. There was no drop in level. Colin was a little depressed. He was still level 1. It seemed that the price of the embrace was not temporary. However, he was not too worried. Now that he had Knight Charles's blood, he should be able to recover quickly and even advance to level 3. For Colin to become a level 3 knight at such a young age, he could definitely be considered to have amazing talent. What? You said he cheated with the blood breed's characteristics? But the blood breed's characteristics were Colin's talent. After Knight Charles filled the cup, Colin asked him to stop. My lord, I can control my blood flow. Knight Charles looked at Colin in surprise. Colin waved his hand casually and said calmly, I said that your body will undergo some changes. These are all the grace of the blood angel. Praise the blood angel. Knight Charles did not doubt him and prayed with a sincere expression. All right, back to business. Colin put the cup of blood aside. I need you to help me train a cavalry. Of course, you have to control your alcohol consumption first. It's okay to drink a little occasionally, but don't let me see you drunk again. Yes, my lord. I'll stop drinking immediately. Knight Charles agreed without hesitation. At this moment he swept away his previous decadent attitude and was full of energy. Although he did not know what Colin's mysterious mission was, this did not stop Knight Charles from being determined to help this blood angel apostle. He would not hesitate even if his body was crushed. How many people are you planning to recruit for the first batch of cavalry, Sir Viscounts? How many people do you think are suitable? Colin was not sure either. I don't think there should be too many in the first batch. Around 100 people would be the most suitable. All right, 100 then. I'll give you priority in recruiting soldiers. If you're interested in the active soldiers of the family army, you can also apply to transfer them to me. What else do you need? Colin did not hold back his support for the cavalry. Charles thought for a moment and said in a low voice, My lord, to build a cavalry, there are 3 important requirements: soldiers, war horses, and armor. I believe that with your support, there shouldn't be a problem with the first one. But for the last 2, if you want a truly powerful cavalry, you can't be careless. Colin touched his chin and agreed with Charles's words. If he only wanted a normal cavalry, then normal horses would be enough. As for armor, he could just give them bows and sabers. Why would he need armor? But this was not what he wanted. What he wanted was a powerful cavalry that could match the Black Cavalry. The Black Cavalry's war horses were the best horses in the northern frontier. As for armor, not to mention the heavy armor that the heavy cavalry wore, even the light cavalry had chainmail, half-body armor, and leather armor according to the soldier's rank. This was the guarantee of the Black Cavalry's battle power. If I go to Marquis Garcia, do you think he will help me? If it was before the conferring ceremony, Colin was confident that Marquis Garcia would definitely help him. But now, Knight Charles shook his head. My lord, I suggest you find someone else. Marquis Dawson. Chapter 77. The study was very quiet. Only the sound of writing could be heard. It was Colin writing a letter to Marquis Dawson. After being reminded by Knight Charles, Colin immediately realized that if he needed war horses and armor, rather than Marquis Garcia, he might as well look for Marquis Dawson. This dwarf marquis was actually the head butler of the Black Cavalry, or at least he used to be. Colin did not know if Marquis Dawson was willing to help him, but he had to try. After writing a sincere letter, Colin dripped wax on the seal of the letter, stamped it with the Angeli family badge, and handed it to Charles. Send your men to deliver this letter to Ironforged, sir. After Knight Charles left, Colin couldn't wait to pick up the cup and drink the blood in one gulp. Then he waited patiently. However, after waiting for half a day, he still did not feel the familiar warmth. What was going on? Could it be that the blood of a blood descendant was the same as a blood slave, and could not help him advance? Colin was a little depressed. But then, he remembered that he still had 2 high-ranking knights who weren't from the blood clan under his command. Moreover, he was a 3rd-step knight. As long as he could get his bloods. Colin paced back and forth in the study, thinking of how to borrow some blood from this big idiot. Soon he had an idea. Opening the door, Colin called the guard at the door and ordered, "Go inform the Knight of Rigo to accompany me to hunt in the suburbs tomorrow morning, sir." After giving the order, Colin returned to the study. For a moment, he did not know what to do. After all, the task had been assigned, and he only needed to take care of the overall situation. Being a leader was great, Colin leaned on the back of the chair, crossed his legs, and looked around the study. Finally, his gaze fell on the judgment blade, hanging on the wall. Since he had nothing to do, Colin stepped forward and took the sword that the Duke had bestowed upon him. He examined it carefully. This was a typical knight's sword. The sword was about 80 centimeters long, and it was completely black. The sword was covered with flame-like patterns, which were engraved with an arcane spell that had a burning effect. The blade was sharp and triangular. Under the sunlight, it emitted a chilling white light. The handle could only be held with one hand, and there was a large ball. It was believed that it could be used in a horse battle. Looking at this knight's sword, Colin suddenly remembered what Marquis Garcia said to him after the Marquis ceremony. At that time, Colin had just been conferred the title of Viscounts by the Duke St. Hilda, and he was given the Judgment Blade. At that time, Colin swore an unconditional loyalty oath to the Duke in a fit of anger. This obviously irritated Marquis Garcia, who had just been betrayed by his brother. Now that he thought about it, Colin suddenly felt that the reason the Duke St. Hilda treated him so well was probably to sow discord between him and Marquis Garcia. Of course, there was no point in regretting it now. Colin was now thinking about the last words Marquis Garcia said to him. Go back and understand the origin of the Judgment Blade in your hands. Reconsider what true loyalty is. The origin of the Judgment Blade? Colin's interest was suddenly piqued. Sheathing the sword, Colin immediately left the study. He remembered that there was a special library in this castle. After the trolls attacked this place, they looted all the wealth of the Suduo family, but they did not touch the books in the library. Obviously, books were not attractive to the trolls. Sir Viscounts. After arriving at the library, an old man with white hair and a white beard immediately stood up and bowed. You are the caretaker here? Yes, you can call me Quincy. Is there anything I can help you with? Colin waved the knight's sword in his hand and asked, Do you have any books about the origin of famous swords? The Judgment Blade? Oh, you actually recognize this sword? Colin was a little surprised. Quincy nodded and explained, Yes, I was fortunate enough to see this sword in Winter City. At that time, it was still the sword of the Duke St. Hilda. Colin narrowed his eyes. To recognize the sword of the Duke St. Hilda, one would definitely not be able to squeeze into a crowd and watch from afar. One would have to be very close to it. Colin did not believe that a mere caretaker of the library in the Viscount's castle would be able to get so close to the Duke St. Hilda. Have you always been a caretaker here? No, I used to be the tax officer of Icestone City. Only then did Colin feel relieved. In this world, the most important task for nobles to govern their territories was to collect taxes. To be able to become the tax officer of Icestone City, Quincy could already be considered a core retainer of the Suduo family. Of course, this was before he was transferred here to be the caretaker of the library. Then why were you transferred here? Because I offended the Viscounts of Suduo. How did you offend him? Quincy hesitated for a moment, but still spoke the truth. I once suggested to the Viscounts of Suduo to reduce the business tax of Icestone City. The Viscounts of Suduo was furious, so he stripped me of my position and transferred me here. Reduce the business tax? Colin was suddenly interested. The nobles wanted nothing more than to increase the tax every day, but this former tax officer of Icestone City actually wanted to reduce the tax. No wonder he was fired by the Viscounts of Suduo. However, Colin felt that he might have found a treasure. Then tell me, why do you want to reduce the business tax? A glimmer of hope flashed through Quincy's eyes, and he said somewhat anxiously, Sir Viscounts, if you have seen the tax documents of Icestone City in the past, you will understand that in this city, the agricultural tax is not the biggest source of income, but the business tax. Icestone City is located at the northeast corner of the northern frontier, so a large number of caravans traveling between the northern frontier and Sky Ice Plains will pass through here. This is the main reason why Icestone City is so prosperous. However, Icestone City is not without competitors. There are still 2 or 3 cities on the northern frontier that have the qualifications to compete with us. Therefore, if you want more merchants to pass through here, then you must give them more benefits. In other words, reduce the business tax. Colin smiled and asked in return, "But this way, won't my tax revenue also be reduced?" Although the tax rate is reduced, the base of the tax revenue will increase. The total amount of tax revenue won't necessarily decrease. I have calculated before, as long as you do it properly, you don't have to worry about your tax revenue decreasing at all. Moreover, more caravans will also mean that the hotels in Icestone City will be full, the taverns will be bustling day and night, and food, clothing, medicine, and so on will be in short supply. The local merchants will make a lot of money from these passing caravans, and the entire city will become more prosperous because of this. Please believe me, there is not much potential left for the agricultural tax to be excavated. However, the business tax is very promising. If I were to do it, I am confident that I can double Icestone City's business tax revenue within 3 years. Within 10 years, this city will become the most dazzling jewel of the northern frontier. Colin looked at the flushed Quincy and didn't say anything else. Quincy also gradually calmed down from his excitement. Colin's silence made him think that he had failed again. However, he was already used to it. Asking the nobles to reduce their taxes was even more unbearable than killing them. "My apologies, Sir Viscounts. Let me take you to find the books." Just as Quincy was about to give up, Colin's voice suddenly rang out, "All right, I will give you this chance." Chapter 78. Colin's words caused Quincy to freeze on the spot. After a while, he came back to his senses and asked in disbelief, "Yes, Sir Viscounts, why you mean, that's right, I'm giving you this chance to return to the position of tax official in Icestone City. Thank you so much. Your kindness and wisdom are as dazzling as the sun, as bright as the ocean. Don't be in such a hurry to thank me." Colin waved his hand and interrupted the overly excited Quincy. "If you mess it up, then I'll guard the library for you for the rest of my life," Quincy said loudly. Colin rolled his eyes. He didn't expect this old man to be so crafty. At his age, who knew how many more years he had left to live? If he messed it up and came back to guard the library, it wouldn't be a loss no matter how he looked at it. Instead, it would seem like Colin was taking care of him in his old age. "No, it's not just you. If you mess it up, your son—" "Oh right, you have a son, right?" Colin saw Quincy nod before continuing, "Your son will also come and guard the library for the rest of his life." Quincy's expression finally changed. "What? Scared? Could it be that all your bold words from before were just boasting?" Colin saw this and began to provoke him. "Of course not." "Good, then you choose. Either you continue to guard the library for me, or you take this chance I'm giving you and take a gamble." Quincy's chest rose and fell violently. After a while, he clenched his teeth and said fiercely, "Sir Viscounts, if I can really make Icestone City the most dazzling city on the northern frontier within 10 years, can you agree to a request of mine? Tell me. I hope you can bestow me with a surname." Colin's eyebrows twitched. In the Radiant Empire, only nobles were allowed to have surnames. Of course, Quincy didn't make this request to have Colin bestow him with a title, because this was not allowed. According to this world's noble laws, commoners were not allowed to be granted titles. Because they didn't have noble bloodlines, they didn't deserve it. However, it wasn't true that commoners couldn't change their social class. And the only way to make this leap was to marry a noble's daughter. As long as this noble's daughter gave birth to a descendant, then this descendant of a commoner and a noble would have a noble bloodline. Although it wouldn't be so pure, it would still be able to enter the eyes of the nobles. Thus, he would have the qualifications to accept the title of nobility. After being granted a title, the descendant could ask the lord to give him a surname. This surname could be shared with his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. This was truly bringing honor to their ancestors. And that was what Quincy's current request meant, to ask Colin to help him. He probably wouldn't be able to marry her. It should be to help Quincy's son marry a noble's daughter, so that their family could achieve a social transition. Okay. Colin nodded. Not only did he not think that a commoner like Quincy, who had not made any contributions yet, was being tactless, he felt that it was a manifestation of self-confidence. One's ability was generally proportional to one's temper. Compared to a mediocre person with a good temper, he preferred a capable person who had a temper and personality and dared to make requests. If this former tax collector could really make Icestone City the wealthiest city on the northern frontier, then Colin felt that this person had the qualifications to enter the ranks of nobles. Seeing that Colin had agreed to his request, Quincy first showed an expression of disbelief, then ecstasy. In the end, he decisively knelt in front of Colin and swore his loyalty. Colin used Judgment Blade to tap Quincy's shoulder, accepting his loyalty. Okay, the tax collector's matter is settled. Now, you should help me look for any records related to this sword. Of course. Please wait a moment. Quincy still hadn't recovered from his excitement, his body trembling nonstop. For a commoner, there was nothing more glorious than entering the ranks of nobles. Even if there was no sign of it yet, Quincy seemed to have seen his family's bright future. Colin didn't have to wait long before Quincy walked out, trembling as he held a thick tome in his hands. After flipping through it for a while, Quincy said respectfully, "Sir Viscounts, the records related to Judgment Blade are all here." Colin nodded and sat down to carefully flip through the book. In reality, there was no such thing as a divine weapon in this world. It was impossible to dominate the world with just a blade or a sword. Perhaps the gods had such things in their hands, but they had never entered the mortal realm. Judgment Blade was just a well-made knight's sword, forged by a famous dwarf blacksmith. It was sharp and tough, but it wasn't invincible. The arcane array carved on it would indeed greatly increase its value, but that was it. It was obviously impossible to rely on this sword to challenge those of a higher rank and kill everyone. If it really had such power, the Duke of St. Hilda wouldn't have casually given it to Colin. What truly made this sword famous was still to see who wielded it and what great things it had done. According to the records, this sword was originally the sword of Duke St. Theon. The most amazing thing that Duke St. Theon had done in his life was to kill the Emperor of the Radiant Empire with his own hands. And the weapon he used at that time was the Judgment Blade. This matter had a great impact at the time, almost causing the Radiant Empire to fall apart. After the Kingslayer, Duke St. Theon killed the Emperor, he became the target of public criticism and was spurned by all humans. The entire human empire was in a state of panic, and the lords all raised their troops, preparing to suppress this Kingslayer. But then something happened that changed this Kingslayer into a judge. Not long after the Kingslayer incident, the Pope of the Radiant Church declared Duke St. Theon innocent in front of everyone and announced an oracle: "Those who have darkness in their hearts will be judged." Thinking back to the situation at the time, this oracle clearly said that the Emperor had darkness in his heart, and Duke St. Theon was judging him. This oracle had saved Duke St. Theon. Even the Radiant God had given an oracle, so naturally, no one dared to continue condemning Duke St. Theon. All the curses immediately shifted to the Emperor who had been killed. Because of the words, "those who have darkness in their hearts," in the oracle, the poor Emperor was called the Dark Emperor. The public opinion changed instantly, and the Dark Emperor became the most foolish and evil monarch in the history of the empire, while the judge Duke St. Theon became the hero of the empire, and the limelight was unparalleled. So, the knight sword he used to kill the Dark Emperor was called the Judgment Blade. After Colin finished reading this part of history, he had even more doubts in his heart. Why did Marquis Garcia want him to know these things? Was he hinting something to Colin? The former Duke St. Theon used this sword to kill his own monarch. Could it be that Marquis Garcia also wanted Colin to use it to kill his own monarch, the Duke St. Hilda? It can't be that straightforward. Colin suddenly remembered that when Marquis Garcia asked him to understand the history of the sword, he was discussing the topic of loyalty. So, the message that Marquis Garcia wanted to convey should have something to do with loyalty. What was loyalty? Was Duke St. Theon's king-killing considered loyalty? If it was betrayal, then why was he pardoned by the Radiant God? Colin thought for a while, then suddenly asked Quincy, who was beside him, "Go and find the detailed records of the Dark Emperor's life for me to see." Dark Emperor? Quincy thought for a while, then shook his head. "I'm sorry, Lord Viscounts, there are no records of this Emperor's life here." "No?" Colin looked up in surprise. The confusion in his heart deepened. How could there be no records? Chapter 79. The Dark Emperor did not leave behind any records. This was a very strange thing. As the former ruler of the Empire of Light, he should have been recorded in history. Moreover, this emperor was so special. He was killed by his own vassal and even attracted the oracle of the god of light. This kind of person should have left a strong mark in history. Even if he was notorious, he should have left something behind. So, what evil things did the Dark Emperor do that he did not leave behind any records? Colin suddenly asked. Quincy shook his head and lowered his voice, as if he was afraid of something. Lord Viscounts, the truth about that part of history has always been shrouded in a fog. What did the Dark Emperor do? Why did the Duke of St. Thean kill him? Why did this matter attract the oracle? These things are not recorded in detail. In all the history books I have seen, the descriptions of these two people are very simple and vague, as if deliberately hiding something. Colin nodded in agreement. He felt that there were too many suspicious points in this part of history. Then, why did Marquis Garcia suggest that he understand this part of history? After thinking for a while, Colin suddenly asked, right, the history of the House of St. Thean should be here, right? Quincy ran to the bookshelf and took out a book. Lord Viscounts, please take a look. Colin flipped through it again. Actually, Colin had some understanding of the House of St. Thean. After all, this was a paladin family, definitely a great noble. Other than the imperial family, there were only 6 such families in the entire human empire. Of course, only 4 of the 6 paladin families could be passed down to the present day. The other 2 disappeared. The House of St. Thean was one of them. Thinking about it carefully, this was actually a very unreasonable thing. Because according to the unspoken rules of the nobles in this world, it was very rare for a family to be destroyed. Just like when the Duke of St. Hilda executed the rebellious lords, he also spared their families. Therefore, these families only lost their titles and territories, but the family did not disappear because of this. They were still considered nobles. No matter how destitute they were, they still had surnames and were fundamentally different from commoners. Once they achieved enough military merits, they could immediately receive rewards and rise again. Therefore, very few noble surnames were lost. Especially for a noble surname like St. Thean, which had the word St in it, it was strange that it disappeared in the long river of history. After skimming through the history of the St. Thean family, Colin was still puzzled. According to the book, the fief of the House of St. Thean was in the east of the empire. However, at that time, the eastern region of the empire was not as monolithic as it was now. Instead, it was divided into 2 territories, one in the south and one in the north. The southern part of the eastern region was the territory of the House of St. Prospero, while the northern part was the territory of the House of St. Thean. The territories of these 2 families were close to each other. Of course, there was no lack of conflict and friction. There were even several large-scale wars. However, what was interesting was that in the end, the crucial war that caused the House of St. Thean to lose the northern part of the eastern region was fought with the House of St. Hilda on the northern frontier. In the war that took place more than 300 years ago, the Dukes of the North led the army to defeat the main army of the House of St. Thean and even killed the judge, Duke St. Thean. In this war, the Blade of Judgment became the trophy of the House of St. Hilda. However, the real winner of that war was the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind, the St. Pros family. They took advantage of the defeat of the House of St. Thean and the heavy losses of the army of the north and invaded the northern part of the eastern region. In the end, they completely destroyed the remaining army of the House of St. Thean and became the only master of the eastern region. However, that was the strange thing. In this war, although the House of St. Thean lost its territory and its army, the family members did not suffer too many losses. Whether it was the House of St. Hilda or the House of St. Prospero, after killing the judge, Duke St. Thean, they would not break the unspoken rules of the aristocracy and kill the House of St. Thean. However, the nightmare of the House of St. Thean began. Without the protection of the castle and the army, the members of the House of St. Thean were repeatedly assassinated, and the killers could not be found. This incident even alarmed the imperial family of the empire. The San Lorenzo family took the initiative to mediate and severely reprimanded the Duke of St. Hilda and the Duke of St. Prospero, asking them to maintain the demeanor of the winners and forgive the losers. At the same time, His Majesty at that time also took the surviving members of the House of St. Thean into the palace for strict protection. However, this still did not stop the members of the House of St. Thean from dying one by one for various strange reasons. Later, even the Church of Light was enraged by this act of breaking the rules. His Holiness the Pope personally stood up and declared that a noble bloodline like the House of St. Thean would not be allowed to die out. 2 cardinals even went to the northern frontier and the eastern region in person, sternly asking the Duke of St. Hilda and the Duke of St. Prospero to stop this act of breaking the rules. Of course, the 2 dukes kept protesting. In order to clear their names, they even announced the whereabouts of every knight under their command and allowed the church personnel to monitor and search their territories at will. Under the gaze of all kinds of people, the 2 biggest enemies of the House of St. Thean seemed to be closely watched and had no chance to act. Even so, it still could not stop the members of the House of St. Thean from dying one by one. Who was behind the scenes and insisted on killing the House of St. Thean? As for this strange incident, the history books did not give an answer. In the end, this once illustrious paladin family disappeared from the empire without a trace. It was not known whether the family had really been completely cut off, or if they had quietly hidden away. After reading this part of history, Colin's doubts did not lessen. Instead, they increased. In his opinion, the history of the Judgment Blade must have hidden the most important information. And this information might be the real hint that Marquis Garcia had given him. However, this clue could not be found in the history books. This was not strange. The things that were written down were usually what the superiors wanted their descendants to see. The real key was something that only a few people knew. The bloody, dirty, and ugly things that were covered by the fog of history were often the truth of the matter. Closing the book, Colin suddenly turned to Quincy and asked, "What do you think of the demise of the House of St. Thean?" Quincy hesitated for a moment and carefully chose his words. "Lord Viscounts, I think they deserved it." "Oh, but no matter how they cover it up, Duke St. Thean's killing of the Dark Emperor is an unforgivable betrayal." Colin did not expect Quincy to see this matter this way. However, after thinking about it carefully, Colin suddenly felt that this old man seemed to be referring to something else. Unforgivable? To whom was the most unforgivable act of regicide? Of course, it was the empire's royal family, the San Lorenzo family. Duke St. Thean's regicide, regardless of the reason, was an unforgivable betrayal to the San Lorenzo family. It severely damaged the prestige of the empire's royal family. No wonder the House of St. Thean was assassinated after escaping into the palace. So this was the situation. The House of St. Hilda and the House of St. Prospero were probably just hired thugs on the surface. The one who really wanted to end the House of St. Thean was probably the empire's royal family. Chapter 80. A reindeer suddenly darted out of the lush forest. It ran very quickly, as if it was hiding from an enemy. Whoosh! A sharp arrow pierced through the layers of leaves and accurately pierced through the reindeer's body. Footsteps sounded, and 3 hunters appeared beside the reindeer's corpse. "Sir Rigo, your archery skills are too exquisite. You hit every shot." An attendant carried the reindeer's corpse on his shoulder and praised loudly. The Knight of Rigo curled his lips. "It's just a reindeer, what's there to be surprised about? Hurry up and help me find where there are wild boars in this forest. Today I want to treat Sir Viscounts to roast pig trotters." The 3 continued to walk forward. Suddenly, the Knight of Rigo stopped. Because a figure suddenly appeared in front of them. The person was tall and thin, wearing a half-body chainmail with a long sword at his waist. He wore a tight helmet that hid his face. The Knight of Rigo frowned, feeling that this person's appearance was a bit strange. He cautiously asked, "I am a knight under Viscount Angley of Icestone City Rigo Morban. May I ask who you are?" The strange person in front of them didn't answer Rigo's question. Seeing this, one of the attendants instantly became angry. "Hey! Rude brat, which mercenary group are you from? Why aren't you answering Sir Rigo's question?" The other side was still silent. The attendant became even angrier and immediately strode forward, trying to take off the strange person's helmet. Rigo didn't stop him, but instead reached for the knight's sword at his waist. Do you understand what I'm saying or not? Ah. Amidst the screams, the attendant stepped into the trap, and his right foot was instantly pierced until it was a bloody mess. Clang. Rigo immediately pulled out his sword and said angrily, "Brat, this is the last warning. Take off your helmet, throw down your sword, and tell us your identity. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." However, the strange person was still unmoved by Rigo's warning. Rigo didn't speak anymore. He held his breath and focused, holding his sword with both hands as he slowly approached the strange person. But before he could reach the strange man, he heard a scream behind him. Leg abruptly turned around and saw that the other attendant following him had also been ambushed. "Bastard!" Leg roared angrily and was about to go back to save the servant. At this moment, the tall and skinny freak suddenly moved. "I've been waiting for you." Leg didn't panic at all. It was as if he had been prepared for this. He turned around and slashed at his opponent. Clang. The two swords clashed. Leg was shocked. "You're a knight." The tall and skinny freak didn't answer. He swung his sword again. The uneasiness in Leg's heart grew stronger. An unfamiliar knight that had suddenly appeared in the outskirts of Icestone City, and a third-rank one at that. This obviously alerted Leg. Could it be that there were other lords targeting the Angeli family? Leg immediately recalled that the mastermind behind the assassination of the viscounts in the kingdom of Greycastle had not been caught yet. Could it be? Boom! Leg swung his sword heavily, forcing the mysterious knight to retreat. Then he did not chase after him. Instead, he turned and ran. The other party had planned this beforehand. This was probably a trap. The viscounts must be in danger as well. Leg didn't dare to stop. He didn't even care about the two attendants behind him. He broke into a run and ran in the direction of Colin. That mysterious knight also chased after him. With one running and one chasing, the two ran quite a distance. Just as the mysterious knight chased after Leg's footsteps and jumped over a small stream, Leg suddenly stopped in his tracks. Then, he abruptly turned around and swung his sword just as the knight landed on the ground. The mysterious knight didn't dodge and was stabbed in the stomach by Leg's sword. "Ha! You didn't expect this, did you?" A sly smile appeared on Leg's fierce face. However, this smile quickly froze. Because the other party actually didn't care about the long sword in his stomach and swung his sword again. This reckless action caught Leg off guard. In order to prevent his forearm from being cut off, he could only let go of his sword. "Which family's knight are you? Are you crazy?" Seeing the mysterious knight with a sword in his stomach and still chasing after him as if nothing had happened, Leg felt that this world was too crazy. Now that he didn't have a weapon, he didn't dare to look back and could only continue running forward. Whoosh! A sharp arrow shot over, but Leg narrowly dodged it. Not good, this guy has a helper. Leg was scared out of his wits. He realized that he was going to die today. Then, a few more arrows shot out from the forest, causing Leg to be tired of dodging. Soon, the mysterious knight behind him caught up. "Chi!" Leg screamed in pain. His thigh was cut by the other party. "Wait, who are you? At least let me know who killed me?" Leg fell to the ground and panted. Unfortunately, the other party didn't care about Leg. Purring! The mysterious knight swung his scabbard and heavily smashed the back of Leg's head. Leg screamed in pain again. "Are you trying to knock me out? Can you use more strength?" Another hit. This time, Leg finally fainted. Leg, wake up." Leg opened his eyes in a daze and saw Colin's face. "Sir Viscounts?" Leg's consciousness didn't seem to be fully awake. After a while, he finally woke up and hurriedly asked, "Sir Viscounts, are you okay? I was attacked by a mysterious knight just now and almost couldn't see you again." Colin held back his laughter and comforted him, "I'm fine. Luckily, I heard your screams and brought people over in time. The knight who attacked you must have heard our movements and ran away." "Ran away?" Leg had a look of pity. He felt that he couldn't take revenge. "Are you okay? You look so pale." Colin asked with concern. "I'm fine. My leg is a little injured. It's not a big deal." However, I'm a little dizzy. I probably lost too much blood. Then you should quickly stop the bleeding. Colin waved at a servant behind him, indicating for him to bandage Leg's wound. Sir Viscounts, that mysterious knight is probably a woman. Leg suddenly said. You saw her face? Colin asked expressionlessly. I didn't. However. Leg rubbed his big bald head. He seemed to have touched the injured area and grimaced in pain. However, when she tried to knock me out, she didn't succeed. With such little strength, she should be a woman. The corner of Colin's mouth twitched. He was a little speechless. Is that so? Then this is indeed a useful clue. Yes. Also, Sir Viscounts, I suspect that this person might be related to the mastermind who tried to assassinate you in Grey Castle. How about this? It's not safe here. Let's return to Ice Stone City first. You'll be in charge of investigating this matter. All right. Leg gritted his teeth. I must catch that damned female knight. And then smash her head. Chapter 81. The night deepened. There was no moonlight in Ice Stone City tonight, only a few stars. Colin stood on the balcony of the Red Castle and looked into the distance. To the north was the cold and barren sky ice field, and to the east he could see the edge of the forest. Who knew how many wild beasts were hidden in the dark forest? After passing through the dark forest, he would enter the territory of the half-elf kingdom. Footsteps sounded, and Knight Charles appeared behind Colin. Sir, you were looking for me? Have a seat. Colin turned around and pointed at the glass of red wine on the table. Have a drink. Knight Charles was a bit hesitant. Sir, I've already prepared to stop drinking. It's fine, just drink less. Colin insisted. Only then did Knight Charles raise the wine glass and lightly touch it with Colin before sending it to his mouth. Colin drank the red wine while paying attention to Knight Charles's reaction. The red wine he gave Charles had poison in it. Of course, this wasn't Colin purposely tricking his blood descendant. It was just that he was doing an experiment. And he had already experimented on blood thralls before and found that they were all immune to poison. Therefore, he felt that higher-level blood descendants should also be immune to poison. How is it? Are there any changes in your body these past few days? Colin put down the wine glass and asked. Charles put down the wine glass and excitedly reported his findings to Colin. Through the other's description, Colin learned that Knight Charles's current changes were very similar to his. Photophobia, bloodthirsty, immortality. Yes, after Charles discovered that his severed fingers had grown back, he began experimenting on his own body. Then he discovered that there were no longer any fatal wounds on his body. Of course, unlike the blood thralls, Charles could still feel pain. Colin rubbed his chin and fell into deep thought. Right now, he really wanted to know if a blood descendant could also level up by drinking the blood of a high-level knight. However, Charles was already a third-level knight, and Colin didn't have the blood of a fourth-level knight to experiment on. Can you control your canine teeth? Colin asked again. Tiger Fong? Puzzled, Knight Charles opened his mouth, revealing 2 inconspicuous canine teeth. I don't think so. Colin guessed that if a bloodline couldn't control the lengthening of its canine teeth, then it probably wouldn't be able to release blood poison through its canine teeth and create blood thralls. Of course, it would be even more impossible to complete the embrace and create the next generation of blood descendants. After that, Colin chatted with Knight Siar about some matters related to the construction of the cavalry. Seeing that Siar's expression remained the same, completely unaffected by the poisonous wine, Colin confirmed the fact that the blood descendants were immune to poison. Oh, by the way, do you like hunting? Colin suddenly asked. Knight Charles froze for a moment and nodded. I like it. Well, the last time I went hunting with Knight Leg, this guy met a mysterious knight and was beaten up. He didn't have enough fun. I was going to go with him again, but I've been too busy recently. If you have time, accompany him to have some fun. After borrowing blood from Rigo last time, Colin had successfully advanced to the 2nd level. However, he felt that Rigo's blood should be able to help him advance to the 3rd level, so he wanted to borrow it again. However, Colin didn't plan to bring Rigo out to hunt again. That would easily arouse the other party's suspicion. If he was attacked every time he went hunting with Colin, then no matter how stupid he was, Rigo would suspect that the attacker was related to Colin. Therefore, he planned to let Knight Charles lure the Knight of Rigo out. Knight Charles didn't suspect anything and naturally nodded in agreement. After sending Knight Charles off, Colin picked up the other party's wine cup and poured the remaining poisonous wine into his mouth. If blood thralls and blood descendants were immune to poison, then he shouldn't have any problems either. Colin thought so. Just as he was carefully feeling the changes in his body, footsteps sounded again. Butler Eamon appeared on the balcony. "Master, you were looking for me?" Colin nodded. "Have a seat." The two sat down on the balcony. Colin clapped his hands and had the maid bring in 2 more cups of red wine and some dried fruit. Of course, there was no poison in the wine this time. The maid quietly placed the things on the table and then quickly left. "You changed all the servants in the castle?" Colin took a sip of red wine and asked. "No, I just changed your personal servants. This is also for your safety, and it didn't cost much." Eamon hurriedly explained. Colin nodded and didn't say anything. The servants in the Red Castle were mostly left behind by the Sue Duo family. Colin originally didn't plan to change all of them. After all, the recruitment and training of new servants required money, and the Angeli family's current financial situation wasn't that great. He needed to save as much money as possible and use it in crucial areas, such as the construction of the army. However, he also knew that the old butler had good intentions, so he didn't reprimand him. "How is the new tax officer, Quincy, doing?" "Very good." Eamon smiled and nodded. "Master, you found a very outstanding tax officer." That's good. However, you have to keep an eye on him. I can't completely trust him yet." "I understand." Seeing that Eamon understood his intentions, Colin was relieved. He took out a letter from his shirt pocket and handed it to the old butler. "I just received a reply from Marquis Dawson. He agreed to provide us with warhorses and armor. However, the price is a little too high. See if it's suitable." Eamon carefully read Marquis Dawson's reply and thought for a moment before saying, "Master, we can get Marquis Dawson to provide a batch of samples. If the quality of the samples is as he said, and isn't inferior to the standard equipment of the Black Cavalry, then the price isn't too high. All right, then let him send over a batch of samples first." Colin rubbed his forehead and was somewhat vexed. "But with our family's finances, can we afford this expenditure?" "It's very difficult," Eamon said truthfully. Seeing that Colin was deep in thought, Eamon advised, "Master, forgive me for being blunt, but isn't it a little too hasty to form a cavalry now?" Colin was silent. He understood that Eamon's words made sense. He was indeed a little hasty. If he waited for a year or two for the territory to recover and for the taxes to be plentiful, it might be more appropriate to form a cavalry. However, Colin couldn't wait that long. He knew that the Duke of St. Hilda and Marquis Garcia had already formed a rift. Although Marquis Garcia didn't seem to have made any moves, as though he had endured his brother's betrayal. However, who knew when a crisis would appear on the northern frontier? At that time, would the Black Cavalry still stand unreservedly on the side of the Duke of St. Hilda, just like the previous 2 times? Thus, Colin felt a deep sense of danger. He had to quickly develop his own forces. Otherwise, he wouldn't even have the right to choose a side and could only go with the flow and be trampled on. Thinking of this, Colin clenched his teeth and said fiercely, "We can borrow money." Chapter 82. Loan. Use the territory's future taxes as collateral to borrow from merchants. As long as the interest is reasonable, I believe that many large merchant guilds will be willing to help us. The old butler's eyebrows furrowed deeply, somewhat hesitant about Colin's decision. In the knowledge of the people of this world, borrowing money was not something to be proud of, especially for a noble. This was practically announcing to everyone I am in need of money. For nobles who valued reputation, this was a very disgraceful thing to do. Unless they were at a critical juncture where they were about to go bankrupt, no noble lord would borrow money from others. "Master, I'm afraid this will affect the Angeli family's reputation," the old butler advised with a face full of worry. "Reputation is false." Colin waved his hand, looking as if he didn't care. For a transmigrator like him, borrowing money to develop himself was a matter of course. In fact, those nobles who would rather die than borrow money were the real fools in Colin's eyes. Using other people's money to develop one's own strength was a very smart thing to do. Even if the worst happened and the loan couldn't be repaid, as long as the Angeli family's army developed smoothly, would they still be afraid of people coming to ask them to repay the debt? Alright, I've made my decision. Release the news tomorrow. We will organize a gathering and invite some powerful merchant guilds to discuss the details of the loan. Yes, master. Seeing that Colin had made up his mind, Eamon didn't dare to say anything more. The next day, when the news that Viscount Angli was preparing to borrow money was released, a group of merchants swarmed to Icestone City like sharks that smelled blood. Just as these merchants were rubbing their hands and preparing to snatch this deal, a merchant came to the Red Fort first and requested to see Viscount Angli. Originally, Colin didn't plan to meet any merchant alone. In his opinion, only by gathering these merchants together and letting them compete would he be able to get the best loan terms. However, when the servant told him that the visitor was Oliver from the Tulip Merchant Guild, Colin still agreed to the other party's request. After all, he was an old acquaintance. Although Oliver had offended Colin, his apology was very sincere. In Colin's opinion, this was a person who knew his limits and knew how to do things. Esteemed Viscounts, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to meet me. I feel extremely honored. The fat merchant still had that flattering smile on his face. When he saw Colin, he immediately bowed 90 degrees, his attitude extremely respectful. All right, Oliver, there's no need to be so courteous with me. I also know what you want. Tell me about your Tulip Chamber of Commerce's conditions. If they are suitable, I don't mind borrowing from you on account of our old acquaintance. Oliver chuckled and said, Sir Viscounts, please be at ease. Based on our past friendship, our Tulip Chamber of Commerce will definitely give you the best loan terms. But before that, please allow me to give you a gift. It's a celebration for you being made a Viscount. Gift? Colin suddenly smiled playfully. He remembered that last time, the fat merchant had given him a set of armor as a gift in exchange for his forgiveness. Then what was the purpose of this gift? There was one thing that Colin was sure of, and that was that Oliver's gift was definitely not a celebration of his promotion to Viscount as he had said. This was simply a bribe. What gift? Colin sneered in his heart. If Oliver thought that a small gift would make him give the Tulip Chamber of Commerce this big loan order, then he was underestimating him too much. Oliver waved his hand behind him. Two servants carried a large box and walked up to him. When the box was opened, a soul-stirring frosty aura assaulted his senses. It turned out to be a set of enchanted armor. Moreover, it was the set that Colin had once asked for the price, but could not afford. If I remember correctly, the price of this set of enchanted armor is 50,000 gold coins, right? Yes, Sir Viscounts. Are you sure you want to give it to me like this? Let me make it clear first. Even if I accept this set of armor, I will not necessarily take care of the Tulip Chamber of Commerce when it comes to the loan. Of course, Sir Viscounts. This set of armor is just to celebrate your promotion as Viscounts. There is no other meaning, and it has nothing to do with the loan. Colin was suddenly puzzled. There was no free lunch in the world. He had always believed in this saying. Oliver had given him such a big gift, how could it be that he did not ask for anything in return? It must be known that 50,000 gold coins was by no means a small amount. When the Angeli family was still a baron, the entire barony's annual tax income was only 3,000 gold coins. Even if he was now a Viscount and his territory had expanded several times, Colin estimated that the annual income of the entire Viscounts would not exceed 30,000 gold coins. Just tell me who sent this gift. Colin did not believe that Oliver, a steward of the Chamber of Commerce, had the authority to decide this matter. Thinking of the person behind the Tulip Chamber of Commerce, Colin suddenly realized something. Oliver's smile disappeared and his tone became solemn. Sir Viscounts, to tell you the truth, this gift was personally decided by our Chamber of Commerce's president. Who is your president? Hearing this question, Oliver did not immediately answer. Instead, he looked around with a mysterious expression. Colin waved his hand and ordered the surrounding attendants, All of you are dismissed. When only Colin and Oliver were left in the hall, the fat merchant spoke again. Sir Viscounts, our Tulip Chamber of Commerce's president is Madame Penny. Madame Penny? Colin thought for a while before finally finding the corresponding name in his memory. Wasn't this the mother of Colin's brother-in-law whose whereabouts were still unknown? She was also the lover of Count Allman. Colin suddenly became vigilant. Why did Madame Penny give me such a big gift? Oliver bowed his head. This is Madame Penny's apology to you. What do you mean? Colin narrowed his eyes. Knight Vala has successfully returned to Fallen Eagle City. However, he had followed your father into battle and was unable to protect the Baron. Therefore, Madame Penny is expressing her most sincere apology to you on behalf of her son. Hearing that his brother-in-law who had disappeared for a long time had suddenly appeared in Fallen Eagle City, Colin's eyes began to flicker with a dangerous light. He tried his best to control his anger and asked calmly, "Is Knight Vala well? Where did he go before?" "Everything is well with the knight. He was captured by the trolls in the previous battle. Later, when the Black Cavalry caught up with the troll army, he was thrown into the ice field with the other human captives by the trolls. Fortunately, the Radiant Lord protected him, and after going through untold hardships, he returned to the northern frontier." Chapter 83. Captured by trolls? And then escaped? Of course, Colin didn't believe a single word of this. In his opinion, after her father died in battle, Vala had probably escaped alone and brought back the news of the Baron's death. This had aroused Count Oman's greed, and he wanted to kill Colin and seize the Angeli family's title. Now, Penny had suddenly sent such a huge gift to Colin through the Tulip Merchant Guild. What was the meaning of this? Was it a deliberate provocation? Or was it because she saw that Colin had succeeded in inheriting the title and was highly valued by the Duke of St. Hilda, and felt that she could no longer do anything, so she began to express goodwill? Does Count Aldman know about this? Colin shook his head inwardly, feeling that Count Oman probably did not know that his lover had sent Colin such a huge gift. Because in Colin's opinion, such a move was too unwise. After all, Colin only suspected that the Oman family had tried to assassinate him, and did not have any evidence. He had not told anyone else. Thus, Lady Penny's actions made her seem guilty. As for congratulating Colin for being promoted to Viscounts, or apologizing for his father's death in battle, these were all excuses. 50,000 gold coins. This was definitely not a small sum. Was there a need to spend so much money to congratulate or apologize? With Count Oman's shrewdness and insidiousness, Colin felt that this count would definitely not do such a thing. Colin sneered inwardly. Although he had never met Count Oman's lover, he had already labeled her as a brainless pretty woman in his heart. Lady Penny is so considerate. In that case, I'll accept it. Colin revealed a sorrowful expression. But this sorrow did not last long, and was immediately replaced by a Philistine. But, can the armor be exchanged for gold coins? Oliver was prepared to say some polite words, but now he suspected that there was something wrong with his ears. Isn't this enchanted armor worth 50,000 gold coins? Colin asked with a natural expression. Yes. Then I don't want the armor. Just give me 50,000 gold coins. Oliver hesitated for a long time. When he saw that Colin was serious and did not seem to be joking, he nodded with a constipated look. If you insist, I can help you change it into gold coins. Only then did Colin smile and clap his hands. Okay, please thank Madame Penny for me. Although it was very impolite and undignified to exchange a gift from someone else for gold coins, especially in front of them. But Colin didn't care. The expensive cost of building a cavalry unit made him want to sell himself. Now that there was such a rare gift from this foolish woman, of course, he would not let it go so easily. Moreover, with his blood breed's undying characteristic, the enchanted armor was of no use at all. At most, it would only look cool. How could it be more practical than gold? Okay, I will certainly convey it for you. Oliver was speechless at this Viscount who did not play by the rules. But he still took a deep breath and asked, Sir Viscounts, regarding the loan, would you be willing to listen to the conditions of our Tulip Chamber of Commerce? Let's hear it. Having just received a huge sum of 50,000 gold coins, Colin was in a good mood. If the Tulip Chamber of Commerce's loan conditions were reasonable, he was prepared to sign a contract with them for the sake of this big gift. Oliver cleared his throat and solemnly said, "Sir Viscounts, our Tulip Chamber of Commerce can provide you with a loan of up to 300,000 gold coins. The annual interest rate is 8% and the term is 10 years. The collateral is the tax revenue of the Viscounts for the next 10 years. Colin had previously asked Eamon about the details of this world's loans. Now that he heard the Tulip Chamber of Commerce's conditions, he immediately knew that the other party's request was not excessive. In fact, the quota of 300,000 gold coins had already exceeded Colin's previous expectations. With such a huge sum of money, he could even equip a cavalry army of 1,000 people. "Good. Mr. Oliver, you can go back and prepare the loan documents. I can sign them at any time." "Yes, Sir Viscounts. Happy cooperation." "We will definitely have a very happy cooperation." Colin strode towards Oliver and affectionately shook hands with him. His smile was sincere. After nightfall, the forest on the outskirts of Icestone City became even more dangerous. Many wild beasts would begin their own hunts under the cover of the night. Therefore, fire became the best weapon for humans to defend themselves in the forest. Beside the blazing bonfire, the Knight of Rigo and the Knight of Seal were eating barbecued meat and laughing loudly. There were also a dozen or so accompanying guards around them. The hunt this time went very smoothly and they did not encounter any strange people. The Knight of Rigo was very satisfied. After eating and drinking his fill and chatting about all sorts of things, the Knight of Rigo bid farewell to the Knight of Seal and went into his own tent, preparing to rest. The bonfire was not extinguished, and there were 2 guards left in the camp to keep watch. The night grew darker and the moon shyly hid behind the clouds, making the forest even darker. "Is there any movement?" one of the guards on duty suddenly asked his companion. His companion, who was about to fall asleep, forced himself to open his sleepy eyes and asked in surprise, "What's wrong?" "I think I heard some movement over there. It's probably some stray cat that smelled the scent of food residues. I'll go take a look." One of them left the bonfire and walked towards the direction of the sound. His companion behind him rubbed his eyes and stretched. Then, when he turned around, he found that the guard who went to check on the situation had disappeared. He was so scared that he quivered. Just as he was about to scream, he found that his mouth was covered from behind. Bang! The back of the head was hit hard and the guard fell to the ground. A tall and thin figure wearing a steel mask appeared behind the guard. She went straight to the Knight of Rigo's tent and went in. The Knight of Rigo, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly felt some movement beside him. He sat up alertly but found that there was no one in front of him. Just as he heaved a sigh of relief and was about to go back to sleep, there was a sudden sound behind his head. Bang! The Knight of Rigo immediately fainted. "Knight of Rigo, Knight of Rigo?" The Knight of Rigo opened his eyes in a daze and saw the anxious eyes of the Knight of Seal. He immediately sat up and shouted, "Damn it! Someone broke into the camp last night." Yes, the 2 guards were also knocked out. "Knight of Rigo, are you okay?" Ouch! He felt a dull pain at the back of his head. Could it be that guy from last time? The mysterious knight from last time? Seal had also heard about what happened to Rigo the last time. He was sympathetic but also confused. "Why does she keep looking for you?" "How would I know?" Rigo mumbled unhappily. At this moment, he saw that his wrist was bandaged and asked doubtfully, "What happened to my hand?" "Oh, when we came in, we found that your hand was cut, so we bandaged it for you." The Knight of Rigo shook his wrist and felt that it was not a big deal, so he did not take it to heart. He stood up and suddenly felt dizzy. He roared gloomily, "Return to the city immediately. Let's go back to the city immediately. This time, I'll bring the army to search. I don't believe that we can't find that damned female knight." Chapter 84. Outside Icestone City, the sound of horse hooves rumbled. The sound of bowstrings rang out continuously, accompanied by the scolding of the officers. "Posture, posture. Don't just focus on aiming, pay attention to maintaining your posture on the horse." "I'm talking about you, damn it. Is your waist broken? And you, Jerry, looks good, they're starting to look good. Colin watched the scene of his first batch of cavalry training from afar and was in a good mood. They're only starting to look good, they're still far from it. The Knight of Charles was clearly still dissatisfied. Colin laughed. They're new recruits after all, you can't use the Black Cavalry's standards to judge them. I'm already very satisfied that they've become like this in just a month. You guys did well. You flatter us. This is mainly due to your support. The Knight of Charles's words weren't completely flattery. Colin's support for this cavalry was indeed unreserved, giving them people, money, and equipment. He spent the huge sum of money he had just borrowed like flowing water, as if he had no concept of saving. Steward Eamon watched with trepidation, occasionally trying to persuade him. But Colin still did things his way. In his opinion, only the money that was spent could have real value. And just as a famous entrepreneur once said, the money wasn't really spent, it was just used to stay by your side in another way. In the past, Colin had scoffed at this saying, but now, looking at this batch of cavalry flying past in front of him, he deeply agreed. Is there a problem with the source of soldiers? I see that you've only recruited about 300 people. After Colin received the huge loan, he increased the size of the cavalry from 100 to 1,000. Sir Viscounts, the first batch of recruits shouldn't be too large. The training effect will greatly decrease if there are too many people. All right, as long as you know what to do. Colin didn't interfere too much with the training of the Knight of Charles. He knew that professional matters should be left to professionals. He really didn't know anything about cavalry training. However, Knight Charles, who was from the Black Cavalry, was an expert in this field. A few days ago, the Knight of Rigo told me that you stole many of his high-quality recruits. Just as Knight Charles was about to explain, Colin waved his hand and continued. Don't be nervous. I'm not blaming you. I've already made it clear that the cavalry has priority when it comes to recruiting new soldiers. I'm just wondering why you didn't pick on Leg's veterans, but went to snatch the recruits from him. Lord Viscounts, although the soldiers under the Knight of Rigo are indeed very good, strong, and highly trained, they are still infantry after all. They are used to fighting on foot, and many of their tactical movements have already been formed. They are not particularly suitable to be cavalry. What about the recruits? What kind of recruit is worth fighting over with Leg? A captive who escaped from the Sky Ice Field? Captive? Yes, a batch of captives that the trolls took away when they invaded the northern frontier a few months ago. Later, when Marquis Garcia led his army to catch up with the trolls, these 50,000 captives were abandoned on the ice field by the trolls. During this period of time, many captives have successfully returned alive. Colin finally understood why these escaped captives were fought over by both Leg and Charles at the same time. Because these people were the true warriors who had been through layers and layers of harsh selection. First, the trolls did the first round of selection. When they took captives, they definitely didn't choose the old, weak, or sick, but the young and strong. This way, they could be used as labor. The second round of selection began when these captives were abandoned on the ice field by the trolls. This was an even more cruel and severe round of selection. This didn't only require a strong body, but also a certain amount of intelligence and courage to be able to survive in the harsh cold and hunger. After all, when the trolls abandoned them, they didn't leave any food for them. Therefore, the only way for these captives to obtain food was through hunting. However, there weren't many wild animals on the ice field. If these 50,000 people gathered together, then even if they caught all the animals in the sky and on the ground, it wouldn't be enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. Therefore, the smart ones had to make a choice at this time. Following the main group seemed safe, but in reality, it was just waiting for death. Only by forming small groups and staying away from the main group could they obtain enough food to fill their stomachs through hunting. In reality, from the looks of the captive groups that had arrived in Icestone City these days, they were all small groups of less than 100 people. Those with more people would probably have starved to death on the ice field long ago. Those with fewer people would be in danger when they encountered ferocious wild beasts. Therefore, these captives who had successfully escaped from the ice field naturally became delicious cakes in the eyes of Charles and Leg. This was especially true for the core members of each small team. They were the seeds of elite soldiers who possessed excellent decision-making ability and excellent organizational skills. Therefore, when the Knight of Rigo relied on Colin's promise to recruit these captives into the cavalry group, the Knight of Rigo couldn't help but complain to Colin. It couldn't be helped, this large knight was just too greedy. But no matter how greedy he was, Colin wouldn't change his strategy. Cavalry was always the military branch that he was determined to develop first. In this era of cold weapons, the deterrence of a strong cavalry group was too terrifying. Especially in places like the northern frontier and the Sky Ice Field, which were mostly plains. Unless the infantry hid in the city and didn't come out, the cavalry would always be the ruler of the battlefield. After inspecting the cavalry's training, Colin also ran to the infantry's training field to take a look. After all, he couldn't be too biased. After receiving a huge loan, Colin had increased the size of the infantry from the original 1,000 to 3,000. Currently, this number wasn't full yet, only about half of them had been recruited. According to the Mobin brothers' estimates, they should be full in a month. Then, after 3 months of training, they would have a basic combat ability. Although they weren't considered elites, they could still go to the battlefield. After the baptism of a few more battles, those who survived would be elites. The formation of the infantry was fast. In comparison, the cavalry was too slow. According to Charles's estimates, it would take at least a year for the cavalry to reach a level where they could barely go to the battlefield. This was all thanks to Charles and the other outstanding instructors from the Blackguards. If it were Colin, he might not be able to succeed even after 3 to 5 years of tinkering. When inspecting the infantry, Colin also saw the gloomy Knight of Rigo. This large knight had a bad temper recently. Whenever he had time, he would drag the recruits to the forest in the suburbs for training. Of course, Colin knew that this guy was using the training as an excuse to get the recruits to help him search for the mysterious knight who had ambushed him. However, the Knight of Rigo was destined to not be able to take revenge. The blood slave Cynthia was usually hidden in the basement of the Red Castle by Colin. After borrowing blood from the Knight of Rigo twice, Colin had successfully advanced to level 3. If outsiders knew about this speed, they would probably call Colin a genius. After inspecting the infantry's training, Colin returned to the Red Castle. After drinking a cup of deer blood wine, he took an afternoon nap. Colin's days as a hands-off boss were very comfortable. However, his leisurely time was soon interrupted. Butler Eamon hurried over and reported, "Master, a team of trolls has arrived on the icy plains." Trolls? Colin's heart tightened. How many of them are there? About 100 of them. They claim to be messengers heading to chilly winter. They are passing by Icestone City and wish to meet you. Messengers? Colin heaved a sigh of relief. Colin thought for a moment with his chin in his hand before nodding. All right, then I'll meet the trolls' messengers. Chapter 85. Under the guidance of the butler, Eamon, a young troll walked through a long corridor and arrived at the inner courtyard of the Red Castle. This troll seemed to be entering a human castle for the first time. He looked around curiously along the way. Eamon stopped outside a room and nodded to the young troll. He made an inviting gesture and said, "Mr. Messenger, the Viscount is waiting for you in the study." The troll smiled, adjusted his collar, and pushed the door open. Colin happened to look up, but he didn't get up. He just smiled and said, "Welcome, Mr. Messenger. Please take a seat." "Honorable Viscount Angley, thank you for your hospitality." The young troll didn't mind Colin's rudeness and was still smiling. The maid walked in quietly, placed a cup of coffee on the table in front of the troll, and then left. "Try it. It's the Sioux Duo family's treasured coffee." Colin made an inviting gesture and said, "This is one of the few things they left behind that I like." The troll first picked up the mug and sniffed it before putting it into his mouth. He closed his eyes and slowly savored the taste. The whole process was elegant and calm. It seemed that he was a troll noble in a high position. Rich fruity aroma, bold and unrestrained acidity. This should be the premium Yega coffee from the Sidamo region. Colin was stunned. He didn't expect this troll to be a coffee expert. "You're amazing. You can even taste this." Although he didn't know if the troll was right, Colin couldn't show his fear now. He immediately pretended that he knew very well. At the same time, he cursed in his heart. Didn't they say that trolls only knew how to fight and kill? Why is this one so pretentious? The young troll took another sip of coffee. There was a hint of nostalgia in his reserved expression. More than 1,000 years ago, the Hidamo area was still our family's territory. Now that I think about it, it does have the taste of my hometown. Colin was slightly surprised and asked curiously, "May I know your name?" The young troll stood up and made a standard human noble bow. "My name is Gunben Vulcan, son of Gunbik Vulcan, southern prince of the Troll Empire." Pooh! Colin, who was drinking coffee, spat it out. I'm sorry. I choked. Colin picked up his handkerchief and lowered his head to wipe off the water stains on his body. He didn't want the other party to see the unconcealable smile on his face. "Okamoto? Why aren't you called Durex?" After wiping for a while, Colin finally controlled his facial expression and sat back down. Although Okamoto wondered why Colin suddenly lost his composure after hearing his name, he was too embarrassed to ask. "I didn't expect that Your Highness the Prince would personally go to the northern frontier. I've neglected you. Although Colin said that, his body was still leaning loosely against the back of the chair. He didn't seem to care about the troll prince at all. Of course, Okamoto wouldn't be angry. At least, he wouldn't show it. After all, the anger of the loser was completely meaningless in front of the winner. No, this is what I should do. Over the years, the Troll Empire and the northern frontier have fought more and more, causing both sides to suffer disastrous losses. Every time I think of my comrades who died on the front lines, my heart aches. So I'm sure that you and the Duke of St. Hilda are the same as me. We don't want to see the war continue. That's why I came to the northern frontier this time with a longing for peace and a yearning for friendship between both sides. Okamoto was still giving an impassioned speech, and Colin already understood the other party's intentions. Don't be fooled by the pompous words of the Troll Empire's new southern prince, saying that he didn't want to see the war continue. In fact, he had come to ask for peace because he couldn't win. Colin rubbed his chin, wondering if the Duke of St. Hilda would agree to this request. Now that the troll army had been destroyed, they were no longer able to resist the invasion of the northern frontier. Would the Duke give up such a good opportunity to pursue the victory? Even if there was no value in occupying the blue ice field, they could still take advantage of this opportunity to plunder the Troll Empire and prevent them from recuperating. Just as Colin was daydreaming, a name that came out from Okamoto's mouth suddenly pulled him back to reality. What? Vera? Did you mention Miss Vera just now? As soon as he heard Vera's name, Colin immediately recovered. Yes. Okamoto lowered his head and replied in a deep voice. The Viscounts in front of him had been rude to him time and time again, and he was about to lose control of his inner anger. However, he took a deep breath and regained his smile before he explained patiently. I was just saying that I heard that the Duke's adopted daughter, Miss Vera, is about to have her coming-of-age ceremony. So, I also prepared a gift for her. I want to take this opportunity to get to know Miss Vera. Colin narrowed his eyes as he sensed that something was wrong. Oh, is that so? I also received an invitation to Miss Vera's coming-of-age ceremony 2 days ago. Then, let's set off for Winter City together tomorrow. It would be my pleasure. At this point, Colin was already wary of the young prince of the Troll Empire. This was because he felt that the other party might have designs on Vera. Was this guy here to have a peace talk, or was he here to get married? Just as Colin was about to ask him to leave, Prince Okamoto suddenly noticed the Blade of Judgment hanging on the wall. He stared at it for a long time, and there was a flash of disbelief in his eyes. Sir Viscounts, may I ask? Is that knight's sword the Blade of Judgment? Yes. It was given to me by the Duke during his conferment. The expression on Prince Okamoto's face suddenly became very strange. There was envy, reverence, and a trace of sympathy. Just as Colin felt that the prince's gaze was a little strange, Prince Okamoto suddenly smiled and said, Sir Viscounts, I don't know if you have heard of His Highness Otto Vulcans. Otto? Colin shook his head. He had never heard of this name before, but he knew that this was also a member of the Troll Empire. His Highness Otto is my uncle and the northern prince of the Troll Empire. He has recently successfully entered the sanctuary realm. Colin frowned as he did not know why Okamoto suddenly mentioned this, but he still congratulated him perfunctorily. Oh, is that so? Then, congratulations to you. The Troll Empire finally has another paladin. After 100 years, the Empire has finally given birth to another paladin. Okamoto's smile became brighter. However, after my uncle successfully advanced to the Sanctuary Realm, he said that he would soon have another duel with the owner of the Blade of Judgment. We will wipe away the disgrace of the previous emperor, His Majesty Leo. Colin was dumbfounded. A paladin wanted to duel with him? Could it be that the Duke of St. Hilda had given him this sword because of this? This was a huge rock falling from the sky. Chapter 86. The troll messengers stayed in Ice Stone City for a day before continuing their journey to Winter City. Colin also set off with them. This time, he only brought Knight Leg and 100 guards with him to Frostwinter Castle. He left Knight Ciara and Knight Raymond in Ice Stone City to continue training the troops. He also left the affairs of the territory to Eamon and Quincy. Originally, her sister Caitlin had wanted to come along as well, but when she heard that there was finally news of her long-lost husband, she ran off to Fallen Eagle City. Colin didn't stop her. He wasn't sure if his sister was involved in the plot to kill him back then. So he let her be. Anyway, he would settle the score with the Oman family sooner or later. He didn't have enough evidence and power. However, he already had an excellent chess piece. When the time was right, he would take revenge for what happened back then. And this chess piece, Blood Slave Cynthia, had also been brought out by Colin this time. She was tailing the troops from 1,000 meters away. Colin realized that the furthest he could give orders to the Blood Slave was 3,000 meters away. Any further and he would lose contact. On the way to Winter City, the Troll Prince often approached Colin with a warm attitude. However, Colin's attitude was perfunctory. Firstly, he felt that the Troll Prince might covet Vera. Secondly, the news of the sacred samurai challenging him to a duel made him unhappy. However, Colin wasn't too worried about this. After all, when the Troll Sacred Samurai said that, he was obviously targeting the Duke of St. Hilda. Colin wasn't the one who cut off the head of the previous Troll Emperor, even though he was now the owner of Judgment Blade. However, if a Sacred Samurai challenged a rank 3 knight to a duel, he would become the laughing stock of the world. The Sacred Samurai probably couldn't afford to lose face. As for who the Northern Frontier would send to deal with the Sacred Samurai, that wasn't something Colin had to worry about. The Duke of St. Hilda probably wouldn't take the field himself, as that would be suicide. As far as Colin could remember, there were no paladins in the Northern Frontier. However, the Radiance Empire did, and there were 2 of them. The paladins of the giant demon empire had come knocking on their door. Presumably, these 2 paladins wouldn't sit idly by. In any case, it had nothing to do with a mere viscounts like Colin. Prince Okamoto had only wanted to scare Colin and take revenge on Colin for looking down on him. Colin naturally wouldn't give this troll messenger any face, even if the other party was a prince. A loser was a loser. After personally experiencing that battle and witnessing the Black Cavalry slaughtering an army of 300,000 trolls as if they were pigs, Colin found it hard to look at the Northern Frontier's greatest enemy in the eye. Prince Okamoto didn't care about Colin's coldness at all. Perhaps he was already mentally prepared, as this prince's attitude was very humble. He took good care of Colin along the way, as if he had really become Colin's servant. This aroused Colin's wariness. This Prince Okamoto couldn't be a Go-Jien type of person, could he? On the surface, he was serving the enemy to reduce his threat, but in reality he was enduring hardships and secretly accumulating the power for revenge. Colin was secretly on guard and began to think of ways to disrupt the other party's peace talks. He couldn't let the trolls succeed in catching their breath. The team didn't travel very quickly, and it took them 8 days to reach Winter Castle. Colin had been to this central city of the Northern Frontier before, but every time he came, he would be deeply shocked by it. Winter Castle was built on a mountain. It was like a giant beast overlooking the entire Northern Frontier. The magnificent city wall, which was more than 30 meters tall, was built halfway up the mountain. The higher the wall, the higher the status of the people who lived there. And on the top of the mountain, which was shrouded in clouds all year round, stood the house of St. Hilda's Castle, Lion's Roar Castle. It was said that this was the highest castle in the entire northern frontier, and even the entire Radiant Empire. It was hard to imagine how much effort had been put into building it. The towering city made everyone speechless for a while. Especially those trolls, who had never seen such a miraculous building complex, couldn't help but show fear on their faces. Listen to my roar, it is the anger of the kingdom of heaven. Okamoto looked at the magnificent castle standing high in the clouds and couldn't help but recite the language of the house of St. Hilda. When he heard this sentence before, this troll prince didn't think much of it. He felt that no matter how powerful the house of St. Hilda was, it wasn't qualified to put the words, Kingdom of Heaven, into the language of the clan. But now he understood. Anyone who lived in that castle and looked down on all living things would inevitably have the illusion that they were the representatives of God in the world. Prince Okamoto didn't know if it was because he recalled the terrifying scene of the black cavalry charging together, but he couldn't help but tremble. Colin appreciated the fear of the trolls and couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as a northern frontier citizen. After you, Your Highness Okamoto. After you, Your Excellency Viscounts. Prince Okamoto's waist seemed to be bent lower than before. The group of people went up the mountain and came to the city gate halfway up the mountain. The closer they got, the more they could feel the enormous pressure emitted by the city. It was as if there was really a lion entrenched in the mountains, coldly watching everyone. At this time, there was a long line at the city gate. It was the people who were waiting to enter the city for inspection. However, as a noble, Colin obviously didn't need to line up. When the roaring white bear's flag was displayed, the crowd quickly split to the sides and made way for Colin and his group. The trolls also benefited from Colin's presence and followed him to the city gate. However, the gazes of the people around them weren't very friendly. If they hadn't followed behind Colin and made the people think that they were the captives or slaves of the Viscounts, perhaps there would have been people rushing up to beat them up. When they arrived at the city gate, the guard's attitude towards Colin was very attentive. After confirming his identity, he immediately let them pass. The troll's treatment was completely different. Even though Prince Okamoto had already taken out his proof of identity and the letter personally signed by the Troll Emperor, the guard still asked all sorts of questions and made things difficult for them. He had a look of distrust on his face. He even repeatedly searched their luggage and took out everything inside. His attitude was extremely bad. Colin chuckled as he watched from the side. He had no intention of stepping forward to help. Many trolls were infuriated by the guard's attitude and were on the verge of exploding. However, not only did the guards not restrain themselves, they even provoked them even more. It was as if they couldn't wait for the trolls to provoke them first so that they would have a reason to kill them. Prince Okamoto maintained his smile from beginning to end. He didn't seem to be affected by favor or humiliation. No matter how the guards made things difficult for him, he patiently explained. His restraint also made the other trolls calm down. When the guards saw how terrified the trolls were, they gradually lost interest and waved their hands to let them enter the city. Your Excellency Viscounts, sorry to have kept you waiting. Your country's guards are too dutiful. Colin looked at the other party's smiling face. Even though he knew that it was fake, he couldn't help but admire the other party's patience. This young troll prince was indeed a character. Just as he was about to call Prince Okamoto into the city, there was a slight commotion at the city gate. Colin looked up and saw a team of half-elves outside the city gate. Chapter 87. Humans were a special existence in this world. They didn't have any reproductive isolation with other races. Thinking about it carefully, this was a wonderful thing. A troll and an elf couldn't produce offspring. But a human, regardless of whether he was with a troll or an elf, could produce offspring. Therefore, some human scholars claimed that humans were the chosen race of God. Toward this sort of claim, the other races all expressed that it was complete nonsense. But no matter what, only humans could reproduce with other races. This was an ironclad fact. The offspring of humans and elves were called half-elves. The offspring of beasts were called half-orcs. The offspring of trolls were called half-trolls, and so on. However, the race that produced the most offspring with humans was the elves. After all, the elves were more in line with humans' aesthetics. As for the beasts, trolls, nagas, and gnomes, other than warriors with unique tastes, very few humans could eat them. Therefore, creatures like half-beastmen and half-trolls were very rare. But there were many half-elves. They had even formed a new race and built a kingdom. When the elves retreated into the radiant moon forest, the humans occupied the most fertile land in the center of the continent and suppressed the other races. The half-elven kingdom wisely chose to become a vassal of the Radiant Empire. Because it was located between the northern frontier and the eastern region of the empire, the half-elven kingdom and the House of St. Hilda had a long history of friendship. Therefore, it wasn't strange for them to appear in chilly winter. But Colin couldn't help but recall the words that the Duke of St. Hilda said to him when he left Icestone City. He felt that the Duke had some thoughts about the half-elven kingdom. Could it be that the arrival of the half-elves in chilly winter was part of the Duke's plan? That's the Silvermoon Guard of the half-elven kingdom. It seems that there are half-elven royalty in this team. Hearing Okamoto's words, Colin pretended to nod. He didn't recognize the insignia on the armor of the half-elven guards. After all, he was the son of a baron in the countryside and had never seen the exclusive guards of the half-elven royalty. Moreover, there wasn't much useful information about the half-elf kingdom in his previous life. He only found the name of the half-elf king and the location of the half-elf capital. The rest of his memories were a bunch of rumors about beautiful half-elf women. At this moment, this group of half-elves had already arrived at the city gate. A young and beautiful half-elf stepped out of the crowd and came before the guard. She handed over a badge and an invitation letter. Half-elves were famous for their beauty in this world. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to breed with humans to form a new race. This young half-elf clearly came from a large noble family. That kind of reserved, arrogant, and elegant demeanor was simply the exclusive label of a large noble family. It was impossible for an ordinary small noble family to nurture such a person. She was tall and wore an elegant white robe. Her silk-like silver hair hung straight from her head to her waist. She had a pair of amber eyes, a delicate nose, pointed ears, and an Adam's apple. Only then did Colin come to his senses. This guy turned out to be a man. Just as Colin was secretly complaining, Okamoto seemed to have recognized the half-elf. He should be the second prince of the half-elf kingdom, Tupmatoan. Do you know him? Okamoto shook his head. I don't know him. However, this is actually not that difficult to guess. Colin rolled his eyes as he knew that the troll was ready to show off again. However, he didn't ask, "How did you guess?" He didn't want this troll to get what he wanted. Okamoto waited for a while, but Colin didn't ask him any questions. However, he wasn't embarrassed at all. Instead, he smiled faintly and explained to himself, the only person who is qualified to represent the half-elf royal family to attend Miss Vera's coming-of-age ceremony must be a direct descendant of the House of Medea. The current half-elf king only has 2 sons. The eldest son is already more than 40 years old. Therefore, it can only be the second prince. Oh, Colin responded faintly. Colin's cold response didn't make Okamoto shut up. Instead, he became even more talkative. Your Excellency Viscounts, do you know? Prince Tup is actually not the biological son of the half-elf king. He is actually adopted. Colin's interest was piqued. This was because he suddenly remembered that Vera was also the Duke's adopted daughter. Could it be that Prince Tup's life was also hiding some strange stories? However, he still ignored Okamoto. I don't want you to pretend. However, Okamoto seemed determined to continue pretending. You may be curious as to why the half-elf king would adopt another son when he already has one. Colin didn't speak and continued to hold back. Okamoto opened his mouth again and continued, in fact, this is the request of the half-elf queen consort. This is because the current half-elf queen consort was remarried after the death of the previous queen consort. But at that time, the half-elf king was already close to 70 years old. At such an old age, no matter how beautiful the new queen consort was, he couldn't make her pregnant with his child. Therefore, it is said that in order to make up for the new queen consort's regret, the king adopted a child from the new queen consort's family and became the new queen consort's son. This is the second prince, Tup. Colin blinked. He couldn't help but admire the troll prince beside him. He actually knew so much about the half-elf royal family's gossip. Therefore, this troll still had the capital to pretend. Just as Colin was about to ask Prince Okamoto more about the half-elf royal family's gossip, the half-elf noble had already entered the city. When he saw Colin's team, he walked straight towards them. After some introductions, Colin discovered that Prince Okamoto's guess was right. It really was the second prince. After the three of them exchanged pleasantries, they walked towards the Lion's Roar Castle at the top of the mountain. The higher they went, the sparser the buildings and fewer the pedestrians. It was clear that the people living around the Lion's Roar Castle were rich and noble. Ordinary civilians wouldn't come to this height. After about 2 hours, everyone finally arrived at the Lion's Roar Castle. The first thing that came into view was the huge 50-meter-tall golden lion statue that stood in front of the castle. Its angry and roaring posture gave people a strong visual shock. This huge castle had a total of 5 floors, arranged in a conical shape, and rose higher with each floor. The castle's gate was wide open. In addition to the fully armed guards, there was also an old man dressed as a butler. After seeing Colin's group, the old butler walked out of the door and slightly bowed. He revealed an impeccable smile and said, "Welcome to the Lion's Roar Castle." Chapter 88. Under the guidance of the servant, Colin arrived at his room in the Lion's Roar Castle. It was a long journey and it was inevitable that he would be covered in dust. Therefore, Colin naturally had to take a bath and change into a clean set of clothes. This was also a form of respect for the first family in the northern frontier. Knock knock knock. As soon as he changed into a clean set of aristocratic casual clothes, someone knocked on his door. Colin thought that it was the servant who had called him for dinner. However, it was obviously still early. Moreover, the butler had told him that there would be a banquet tonight. Out of curiosity, Colin opened the door. Then, a flash of surprise flashed across his face. Outside the door was Vera, who he had not seen for a long time. Today, Vera was wearing a red velvet coat. Her long golden hair was still wet and it seemed that she had just taken a bath not long ago. Her white skin was exuding a charming blush, and it seemed that she could not stand Colin's burning gaze. "Long time no see, Miss Vera." "Long time no see, Colin." The female mage smiled slightly, revealing 2 faint dimples. She looked very cute. "This should be your first time in the Lion's Roar Castle, right?" "Yes." Colin, the country bumpkin, nodded honestly. Vera smiled, turned around and waved at Colin. "Let's go, I will show you around." "Hey, Miss Tour Guide." "Hee hee." The crisp laughter still echoed in the corridor, but Vera's figure had already disappeared around the corner. Colin closed the door and chased after the faint rose fragrance. This is the front yard. Originally, there were a lot of osmanthus trees planted here. However, my father thought that their fragrance was too strong, so he replaced all of them. This is the tower. When I was a child, I liked to climb up there because I could see very far away. However, my father always said that girls should not climb so high. Over there is the kitchen and the warehouse. When I was a child, I liked to hide there when I played hide and seek with Charles and Adams. They always could not find me, huh? However, the old butler would get angry every time. He always said that this is not a place for a lady. You are as old-fashioned as my father." "That's the garden, my favorite place." "That's the church." Vera seemed to have transformed into a chirping little bird as she kept introducing everything about the Lion's Roar Fortress to Colin, as well as the beautiful memories that she had left in this place. As she spoke, Colin seemed to see that innocent, cute, and somewhat eccentric little girl in a trance. "This is the place I was most afraid of when I was young." Vera suddenly lowered her voice. Colin also felt that the atmosphere around him seemed to have become heavy. He curiously followed Vera into a courtyard in the depths of the castle. However, he suddenly froze on the spot. Numerous gazes shot towards him like sharp arrows, rendering him unable to move at all. Looking up, Colin was shocked to discover that the owners of these gazes were actually huge statues. These are the paladins from the House of St. Hilda's history, Vera said with a serious expression on her face. Paladin. Colin suddenly realized that it was no wonder that they could have such a powerful aura. After a quick count, Colin found that there were a total of 12 statues here. In other words, in more than 1,000 years, the House of St. Hilda had only given birth to 12 paladins. They were the guarantee of the family's prosperity and the embodiment of its noble bloodline. They were also the source of the House of St. Hilda's supreme glory. At the same time, Colin also noticed that the eyes of these paladin statues seemed to have been carefully designed. They were all looking in the same direction, which was the entrance of the courtyard. The people who had just walked in were caught off guard and had to bear so many gazes. Even if they were all statues, it was still enough to make a timid person tremble in fear. This is Paladin Francois, this is Paladin Britta, this is Paladin Limes. Vera pointed at the statues and introduced them to Colin one by one. Finally, the two of them came to the largest statue placed in the center of the courtyard. This is the first paladin of the House of St. Hilda, the Lion of Fire, Ryan St. Hilda. Colin raised his head and looked at the huge statue that was more than 10 meters tall. His heart trembled slightly. The pioneer of the northern frontier, the gravedigger of the trolls, the northern barrier of the empire, these series of glorious titles were all about the first paladin of the House of St. Hilda. Colin easily found the relevant information about him from his memory. More than half of the territory of the northern frontier was conquered by Paladin Ryan more than 1,000 years ago. More importantly, he had completely broken the backbone of the giant demon clan. He had established the military and psychological superiority of the northern frontier over the Troll Empire. Even if more than 1,000 years had passed, the trolls could only linger on in the ice fields. They could no longer return to their ancestral land. The story of the paladin's life had long been sung by bards thousands of times, but it was still very popular. The reason why the people of the northern frontier recognized the House of St. Hilda was most likely because of Paladin Ryan. This was also the reason why the other families had never dared to dream of becoming the ruler of the northern frontier. The northern frontier could only be defended by the House of St. Hilda. Colin, do you know? Actually, I used to want to become a paladin. Is that so? Colin turned his head and looked at the female mage. She was staring at the statue of Paladin Ryan with a face full of admiration. Yes. I had planned to ask my father to help me arrange a baptism ceremony on my 10th birthday. But when I was 6 years old, my father sent me to Yevil to study arcana. Why did the Duke send you to study arcana? Colin took the opportunity to ask the question that had always been on his mind. In this world, the nobles and the mages were natural enemies. Vera was the adopted daughter of the Duke, so no matter how he looked at it, she should not have anything to do with a mage. At that time, my father told me that if I wanted to know the truth about this world, then I should go to Yevil. Colin frowned. So you believed him? Why not? That is my father. Colin rolled his eyes and thought to himself, what a gullible little girl. From the perspective of this old silver coin, the Duke sent Vera to Yevil because he wanted her to stay away from the center of power in the northern frontier. After becoming a mage, it would be even more difficult for Vera to inherit the title of the Duke. In short, the Duke was guarding against his younger brother. However, obviously, Marquis Garcia still found an opportunity to take advantage of the chaos in the northern frontier to let Vera return to the northern frontier. He had even received the Duke's promise that after Charles, Vera would be the first in line to inherit the title of the Duke. Unfortunately, the Duke went back on his word in the end. He had broken his promise to his younger brother. Since then, the hatred had been planted, and he did not know when it would break out. So, have you found the truth about this world? Not yet. Vera pursed her lips and said with a firm look on her face, but I firmly believe that this path is the right one. My relentless pursuit of the truth of the arcana will lead me to the truth of this world one day. Colin was about to continue teasing the naive female mage when he suddenly heard footsteps behind him. Miss Vera Viscount Angley. The Queen's carriage is about to arrive at the Lion's Roar Fortress. The Queen? Aunt. Chapter 89. When he heard Vera call her aunt, Colin came to a realization. The Empress of the Radiant Empire was the sister of the Duke of St. Hilda. It was said that before the Empress was married, her beauty was already the best in the northern frontier. Countless nobles flocked to her and pursued her crazily. However, the most charming flower in the northern frontier was eventually plucked by the Emperor of the Radiant Empire. Empress Medela had a good reputation in the empire. She was noble and elegant, kind, devout, and had given birth to a son and a daughter for the emperor. She could be said to be a model empress. "Quick, Colin, let's go and welcome my aunt." Vera lifted her skirt and trotted forward. Colin hurriedly followed her. Seeing her excited appearance, he asked curiously, "Are you that close to the empress?" "In my heart, my aunt is a perfect lady. She is my idol." When the two of them arrived at the main gate of the castle, a large number of nobles had already gathered there. Even the Duke of St. Hilda came to welcome his sister in person. The sound of hooves could be heard clearly, and then a neat convoy gradually appeared in front of everyone. 8 knights in red full-body armor rode at the front of the convoy. Each of them held a white flame flag in their hands. That was the emblem of the imperial family, the San Lorenzo family. Unlike the ordinary nobles who generally used animals as their family emblem, the symbol of the imperial family was a burning flame. More than 1,000 years ago, this humble flame swept across the entire continent with the force of a prairie fire, burning all the large and small human kingdoms at that time. It ended the history of the human race being fragmented and established a unified empire. A luxurious carriage slowly drove into the castle gate. A knight personally opened the magnificent golden wooden door of the carriage and welcomed a beautiful noble lady out. In an instant, the whole castle seemed to be illuminated by her brilliance. "Your Highness." The nobles who came to welcome her bowed. Colin quietly raised his head and looked at the beautiful empress. She wore a red low-cut spider silk robe, and her golden hair casually draped over her fair shoulders like a waterfall. Her watery eyes were like a bottomless pool of water. It reflected the primitive desire that every man dared not speak of in the deepest part of their hearts. Colin hurriedly lowered his head, not daring to look again. "Brother, you've gained weight again." The Empress' voice was soft and sweet, as if she was acting coquettishly to her lover. "Ha!" The Duke of St. Hilda laughed out loud and rubbed his round belly. "I can't compete with the previous dukes of the north in terms of achievements, so I have to work on my weight." The Empress smiled before she looked at Vera, who was standing behind the Duke. "Vera, come over here." Vera quickly stepped forward and held the Empress' hand. She smiled and said, "Auntie, you are still so beautiful." When the Empress heard Vera's words, she smiled and tidied up Vera's hair. She shook her head and said, "Auntie is already old, unlike you who is still in your prime. I believe that after this coming-of-age ceremony, there will be countless noble men who will crazily pursue you." In fact, the Empress was not that old. She was just over 30 years old and was in the most perfect period of a woman's life. She was still young and inexperienced, but her mature charm was already quietly blooming. When she stood next to Vera, they did not look like aunt and niece at all. Instead, they looked more like sisters. "No," Vera blushed and shook the Empress' arm gently. "I don't want to get married so early." "But if you don't want to get married, then don't get married. Let those men suffer for a few more years." The two beauties talked and laughed as they walked into the castle. Colin secretly admired the genes of the House of St. Hilda as he peeked at them. When she arrived in front of Marquis Garcia, Empress Medela tilted her head slightly and said with a smile, "Second brother, do you still not like to smile?" The corners of Marquis Garcia's mouth twitched and he said helplessly, "Your Highness, I am already smiling." The Empress shook her head. She was a little helpless when it came to this stubborn man. She had no choice but to change the topic. "I heard that you have won another battle recently. The 300,000 troll army was completely wiped out. Such a great victory has not been seen on the northern frontier for a long time." His Majesty was also very happy when he heard the news. "Therefore, he specially ordered me to bring you his reward. However, tomorrow is Vera's coming-of-age ceremony. I will give you the reward after that." After all, we cannot steal the limelight from our little princess. Okay. Marquis Garcia nodded indifferently. Auntie, I'm not a princess. Besides, I don't need to worry about Uncle stealing the limelight. Vera protested as she shook the Empress' arm shyly. The Empress patted Vera's little hand gently and comforted the spoiled little girl. Then, she glanced at the crowd and asked strangely, "Why don't I see Charles?" The atmosphere suddenly became a little stagnant. The Duke of St. Hilda chuckled and explained, "Charles is guarding the border. He can't even come back to attend his sister's coming-of-age ceremony?" "No, he can't." The Duke's voice was as hard as iron. "He must pay the price for his mistakes. As long as he does not break through the Troll's city, he will not be able to return to Winter City." The Empress sighed and turned to look at Adams, who was behind the Duke. "Do you think that Father's punishment for your brother is appropriate?" Marquis Adams immediately straightened his back and said loudly, "I think that Father is doing this for my brother's good. What he needs the most now is atonement." The Empress chuckled, and the look in her eyes was a little complicated. She gently raised her hand and stroked Adam's cheek and whispered, "Then you have to be careful. The more power you want, the more responsibility you have to bear. The position of Marquis is not so easy to bear. Auntie, rest assured. I will try my best to do my best. Moreover, as a member of the House of St. Hilda, I have long been ready to bear any hardships. The Empress smiled and turned to the Duke. "Adams is really the son who is most like you." The Duke also smiled, but he did not comment on this sentence. When Marquis Adams heard the Empress praise, he suddenly became excited and straightened his back. "Wow, our Joyce has grown so tall?" The Empress looked at the Duke's youngest son and said in surprise, "Yes, Auntie. Welcome back to the Lion's Roar Castle." Joyce was still a little reserved. When Medela married into the royal family, Joyce was still young, so this beautiful aunt was a little unfamiliar to him. The Empress smiled and touched Joyce's hair. Then, she walked past the St. Hilda family and greeted the rest of the nobles. "Thank you for welcoming me. As a member of the House of St. Hilda, I also welcome you to the Lion's Roar Castle. I hope that you can enjoy a wonderful and happy time here. Also, I hope that you can witness my niece's, Vera St. Hilda's coming-of-age ceremony." After saying this, the Empress and the Duke of St. Hilda walked side by side into the castle. The main characters were all present. The ceremony was about to begin. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.